a moment. Oh, I'm sorry. We're already going. Never mind. I retract my statement. Janine's already on top of it.
Yep.
Thank you both. Good evening, everybody. My name is J.D. Noland. I'm the chair of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. We have a very important meeting tonight, so welcome, everybody. I want to thank Janine Pretente, our community associate, Jesse Bodine, our district manager, are both here and will be running the meeting as well as we can run it. I also want to welcome Eric Bachar, our council member, if he is here, and to welcome Jeffrey LaFrancois, our chair of our community board. Welcome, Jeffrey and Eric and everybody else. We have a pretty important meeting tonight. We have a full agenda. As you know, we're on Zoom. There are certain regulations. I'm sure everybody knows what to do. Janine, if somebody is calling in with a comment, what do?
They can press *9 or *6 to unmute and speak.
Okay, so we're going to start with the presentations. Then, of course, we have the committee members weigh in and speak up. I will introduce the committee members, and then we will go to the community and the neighborhood. And frankly, you are as important, more important than we members of this board. So everybody is encouraged to speak and to participate in the proceedings. I'm going to start tonight. I've asked to put up in front of the agenda a concern we have about a number of buildings in the special district of Hell's Kitchen. We're concerned about the buildings, but also the buildings next to those buildings and the people in the buildings next to them, because these buildings are under a considerable stress at the moment. And I'm going to ask Jesse to bring us up to date on the four or five buildings we are talking about. I just want to say before we start, Ed Kirkland, who was a member of this board for many years and was the leader in preserving both Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen as historic neighborhoods, died yesterday. He was 96. He would have been 97 in June. He was a very important person for us in Hell's Kitchen to try to preserve our buildings. So he is with us tonight as we talk about these special buildings in our special district. And Jesse, could you bring us up to date on these 4 or 5 buildings?
Sure. Not to disappoint anybody, it's only 3 buildings, but I'm happy to do so. I don't know necessarily the order they are listed in the agenda as posted on our website, so I'm just going to go through the way that I have them listed for myself on my notes. So one of them is 343 West 47th Street. It's a 4-unit multiple dwelling in the I believe it's a 4-unit multiple dwelling in the preservation area of the Clinton Special District. The site has both has anti-harassment protections and demo protections. It has a history of hotel use dating back to 2017, improper hotel use, illegal hotel use, that is, I'm sorry. More recently, there was a fire in the building in August of 2021. So I'm going to give you the brief history of where we are with this building. I'm sure some committee members can speak in more detail. But in April, I'm sorry, sometimes I have to count out the months, it gets all mixed up. April of 2021, Community Board 4 reached out to the Department of Buildings because there was an active demolition at the building. Like I said before, it is in the preservation area. It's in the Clinton Special District. We know that there are protections around such actions. We knew about this because of the Block Association. I want to give West 47th Street, West 48th Street Block Association a lot of credit for seeing this and instantly instantly contacting all of the right people. We could instantly contact the Department of Buildings, and to their credit, Department of Buildings sent an inspector the same day, and I believe a full stop work order was issued on that site at that day, and I believe it still remains. We have continued to monitor the site and checking in with Department of Buildings. From my understanding, the owner must resolve the open zoning objections prior to any full stop work order being lifted. We did receive a letter from the West 47th, 48th Street Block Association, regarding both what, as JD mentioned, the safety of the building just to the neighboring buildings, but also the concerns about what the future development of the site would be and everything. The owners were notified of that the building would be discussed tonight. I would have to check if they're in attendance. We can do that for sure. JD, do you want me to go through all of these, or do you want us to go
No,
discuss?
first of all, I forgot, I'll introduce the committee members, ask them to introduce themselves, while Jesse, if you could find out if the owners indeed did come tonight, as they said they might. So I'm JD Noland on this committee, and James, I think I see you next, James Hull. Well, no, you're not with us. I'm sorry. Oh, Theodore, I see you, Theodore. Introduce yourself. Unmute.
I am Theodore Arenas. I am a committee member. Nice to see you all tonight.
All right, thank you. Brian, I see you. Brian Weber.
Hey, Happy New Year, everyone. It's Brian Weber. I'm a public member of the CHKLU committee.
Thank you, Brian. Leslie.
Leslie Williams, a member of the committee.
Well, welcome, Leslie. Paul, I see you.
Everyone, Happy New Year. Paul Devlin, member of the Hell's Kitchen Land Use, also co-chair of the Chelsea Land Use Committee, so bring district-wide perspective.
Welcome, Paul. Dale, I see you there. Hi, Dale.
Everyone, Dale Corvino, committee member.
Welcome, Dale. Sarah.
Hi, guys. I'm Sarah Mills, committee member.
Welcome, Sarah. Joe.
Joe Restuccia, committee member and co-chair Housing, Health, Human Services.
That's great. Now, Frank, I see you there, and Bob.
Yeah, Frank Hall-Zubiak, committee member.
And Bob.
Bob Benfato, land use committee member.
That's great. Now, who have I forgotten as I look around? Have I gotten everybody on the committee?
Leslie.
David Solnick.
Oh, David, there you are. Welcome, David. And Chris.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Christopher LeBron, member of the committee, West 47th Street.
Great. Thank you all. Jesse, do we know if the folks are here from that building on West 47th?
They are. I just want to also highlight, I apologize if we've got over it, I missed it. Leslie Williams from the committee is here.
Yeah, I spoke.
Oh, you did? I apologize.
Yes. No
and
problem.
then our chair, Jeffrey LaFrancois, is here as well. So yes, we do have the owner, Kelvin Zhao, is here. So I'm going to bring him over. Kelvin, I'm going to bring you over to panelists so you can turn your camera on and mic on and let us know how you're doing.
Yes. Are you with us, Kelvin? Not yet?
He's coming over now.
Okay.
Calvin, are you with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Yes, welcome, Kelvin. We're very happy. Kelvin.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, and I also have Brett Simmons is also on the line too. He's a majority shareholder of the Midtown West 47th Street, and I emailed to Jesse before.
Okay.
We're getting feedback from one of. I think it's no, maybe Calvin. Calvin, if you're in the room, somebody's also got mic on you. Turn one of the mics.
No, it's only myself.
Okay.
No, I'm on. This is Brad Simmons.
Jesse, JD, we're getting playback from everyone.
That's not.
If you can mute, if you're not speaking.
Yeah, let's just mute everybody. That's not it. Yeah, that just didn't happen with Joe. So I think
that seems to have solved it.
There we go.
Thank you, Dale, for that suggestion. Kelvin, welcome, both of you. As you know, the community is very concerned about this building. Apparently, it's half demolished. We don't know what's going on. Can you tell us what is going on with this building, why it was half demolished, and what is going to happen next? And especially, are the folks next door safe or in any danger?
Yeah, I can explain. I'm the majority shareholder of the property at 343 West 47th Street. We were in a position to knock down the building because I'm actually looking to reside in the premises during the time, but we had all the necessary permits. We were in the process of getting ready to get everything done, but for some, we were stopped. We had a stop work order, so we had to stop the demolition of the property.
Bradley, thank you. Would you repeat that? You had all the permits to demolish the building from where?
From the Department of Buildings. We had all from the demolition, from our engineers. We were in the process of knocking down. We didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary for the demolition of a structure, but we were just requested to stop working because of so for reasons that we are still unaware of.
Okay, so let me just take this piece of it.
Hold on, Bradley.
Yeah.
I think there is some confusion here. I know Joe is a longtime member of the neighborhood and knows a lot about buildings being demolished. Joe, how could that?
I will speak not to buildings being demolished, but to the zoning and the zoning district in which the building is located. 343 West 47th Street was a city-owned building that was sold through an RFP process to 4 firemen for owner occupancy. There was a restriction for so many years that expired, and then there was illegal hotel use at the building, at which point your company acquired the building. The building is in the preservation area of the Clinton Special Zoning District. Any owner who buys a building does full due diligence to determine what the zoning regulations are. In the Clinton Preservation District, in the Clinton Special District Preservation Area, residential buildings cannot be demolished. The reason the Block Association contacted the community board and engaged with the Department of Buildings is because there is a complete prohibition against demolition of residential buildings. And as a purchaser and an owner, I'm assuming you're represented by counsel and did a full background check and survey as to what the requirements and regulations were for this location. That preservation area goes from West 43rd Street to West 56th Street, 150 feet west of 8th Avenue, over nearly to 11th Avenue. So it is a common fact. It is known by developers. It is known by owners. And the reason the neighborhood actually looks like it does is you cannot demolish residential buildings. So if you bought this with the understanding that it could be demolished, that was incorrect. And I would say you were probably poorly represented by counsel. The reason you were stopped is because you were demolishing a building in violation of that zoning regulation. So our question is, now that you are aware and the Department of Buildings has made you aware through the stop work order, what is your intention on how to restore the building?
Let me just, I understand exactly what you're saying about the building is in the Clinton district. We received a certificate of non-harassment. We waited a year prior to doing any demolition to the property. Our full intention was to increase the height of, as we're allowed to, an additional floor. We had no intention to knock down the entire structure until we found there was mold and the building, the structure had issues in it. And that's why we started to knock down the building, which was discussed through our engineer. Our intention is to complete, everybody can shake their head and say, no, 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 I understand. But our position is to knock the building down because of the issue with the structure. where our intention at the initial was to increase the size of the building. If you look at 318 West 47th Street, we were looking to do something similar to that after we found out that we weren't able to knock down the building. We were just going to increase an additional floor. We want to we understand the Clinton district, we understand the community, and our position is to enhance it, not change anything in reference to the way that the community looks.
Well, no, you just stated initially you had no information that you could demolish the building. That's incorrect. Now you stated that you had information about it.
Did you check with the building department to see that we had demolition permits?
The building department has issued permits in error in multiple locations, and you are the 15th location in the past 5 years that has been stopped.
Okay.
Irrespective, if you purchase the building, you know that zoning regulations exist. And if your goal was to add a floor to it, that's fine. You cannot claim a self-induced hardship that the building is now structurally unstable because of the work that you've done as a way to get around the regulation. So we would like to work.
This was prior to us knocking down the building that we received. This was when we were working on increasing the structure. We found there were issues where we were our intention was to go up an additional floor. Right. I, as a builder, this is not the first property I built. I understand the integrity of the property. And if we cannot build it and with safely, especially with a park next door, I'm not willing to do that and put myself along with anybody else at harm.
That all sounds very dramatic, but the reality here is you have a stop.
I'm not being dramatic at all. I'm just going according to what I was told by my engineers and by all of my structural people. That's
you have a stop work order by the Department of Buildings, and your only option is to restore the structure. You can add on to it. You can do rebuilding, whatever. You can renovate.
If I have water tests showing that the building's integrity is not strong, by multiple engineers,
that'll be up to the Department of Buildings, sir. That is not up to your engineers. That is up to the Department of Buildings to make that determination.
I am fully aware of that.
So you should just be aware that our community board, our council member are working with the Department of Buildings to ensure that this building is not demolished, but preserved as per the zoning regulations, irrespective of your actions or the Department of Buildings actions. And we are working with them. We would like to work with you to get to a good, solid solution, as opposed to demolition.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Mr. Bradley, I think we're going to leave it right there. We need to resolve this issue. We need to work with you. Demolition will not continue until this is resolved, and the rebuilding will not continue until this is resolved. So we urge you to arrange with Jesse Bodine, our district manager, to set up a meeting with us and the Department of Buildings to try to get this issue resolved.
That's what I'm trying to do. I've been trying for a couple of years to resolve it. I've done everything according to the structure of the building.
We have not heard from you. We have not heard from you. The Block Association has not heard from you. This is the first time we have met.
And we're happy to see you.
I urge you to get in touch with Jesse Bodine so we can start having a meeting to try to resolve this issue, not only for your benefit, but for the community.
I know, I agree. I do not like the building in disrepair for so many years. I agree. I wanted to be in a beautiful condition, and I'm willing to do whatever I can to go ahead and resolve this.
That's great. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming tonight. And thank you, Joe, for that information. Now, Jesse, there was another building. There were two buildings on 46th and one on 48th.
So there, yep. I'm sorry, give me one more second for my notes here. So we can jump to 46th Street. 412 West 46th Street. Again, I believe it's a 15-unit multiple dwelling in the preservation area of the Clinton Special District. Again, the site has both anti-harassment protections and demo protections. In recollection serves, in terms of what was where our office got engaged, where our office most recently engaged on this, is around May of 2021. The community again notified us about folks living in the building illegally, that the building was unsealed, and folks were living in it, using it as shelter. We contacted the city agencies. DOB issued a declaration to seal up the building. I believe actually even homeless outreach folks were out there trying to hopefully provide services to the folks that were using the building improperly. So cut to January 6, 2022, Department of Buildings has notified us, and along with Councilmember Botcher's office, that the DOB was monitoring the building and would be conducting an inspection in the following weeks to determine the condition of the building, because they were particularly concerned about the safety of the building and whether it needed could possibly would have to be altered or demoed. CB4, in response to that, CB4 organized a follow-up call with the Department of Buildings and the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and requested that all future inspections include HPD. And we advocated that HPD take the lead and issue if anything, could issue a vacate order, but with a notice to cure. So the owner's responsible for curing the situation rather than it being considered an unsafe building and demoed. We did reach out to the owners on file. Unfortunately, we did not hear back in confirmation whether they could attend tonight.
Thank you, Jesse. We also have Eric Botcher's support on this, our council members' support on getting to the bottom of this and trying to prevent another demolition. Joe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that our community board's history with these buildings is 410 and 412 West 46th Street. There's multiple violations for the buildings being used as illegal hotels. And the mayor's office of enforcement has been deeply involved in getting rid of that use, putting vacates. It was constant. And after the hotels were hotel use was finally closed down, that's when the owner in many ways began to leave the building open. It is again, a self-inflicted injury where the owner began to do work, remove part of the roof, got a stop work order, and then people began to occupy the building when it was unsealed. So it's a very similar matter where the condition is caused by the owner. And now we are looking at both DOB and HPD trying to figure out, can we bring in the emergency repair program to do whatever necessary structural work needs to be done to preserve the units, the building. There are currently 30 rent stabilized apartments between the two buildings.
JD, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Sorry, thank you, Joe. This is a concern of the neighborhood. As you all know, it's the number 14, I think, of the potential loss of a building. There's one more building, and I thank the committee and the community for listening to this, but it's very important. Jesse, there's also a building on 48th Street.
Sure.
Issues have been raised of concern.
Yeah. So 356 West 48th Street is again a multiple dwelling in the preservation area in the Clinton Special District. It has the anti-harassment, anti-demo restrictions. This building has, while this building, we've known about it for a long time, it has been vacant for a long time. We most recently received a letter from the West 47th Street, 48th Street Block Association, who had let us know that they had reached out to the new owners. Currently the site had been sold, and it's got a lot of issues with rodent and sanitation issues that are just sort of, kind of block level issues. But I think the larger issue is concerned about the potential of trying to redevelop the site, along with maybe other sites that it's abutting, and not knowing about the Clinton Special District and the preservation area. So the Block Association reached out to us formally in a letter asking for our support to communicate with the new owners to make sure that we were not ending up in the two situations that we have just reported on the other two buildings. Before I end, I just would like to personally say that not the 48th Street building in particular, but the 46th Street building and the 47th Street building, in my time here as district manager, we have been continually highlighting these two issues to the administration, the prior administration, to HPD, to DOB, to Department of City Planning for the last 6 to 7 years. Tell me if I'm wrong, Joe, when these things started happening. it's demo by neglect, and then it's also illegal demolition. And we have been highlighting them again and again and again. We have been coming up with solutions, individual solutions to buildings to resolve the issues. We have been coming up with solutions to fix the loopholes and the gaps in the existing zoning resolution. And unfortunately, for the last administration, we have gotten no response. And so I find it extremely frustrating that we are here again talking about two buildings with perfect examples of things that we've been highlighting to HPD and to the DOB and to the mayor's office about preservation of affordable housing in our district. And so if we're going to change anything about the Clinton Special District and the preservation area, this is where we should start.
Well said, Jesse Bodine. Thank you very much for that. I want to point out also the building on 48th Street is also part of a larger collection, which includes buildings on 9th Avenue. So I think it's very important that we do reach out to the owner of those buildings to point out the special district, in case they don't know about it, that air rights are not available for them to tear down buildings on 9th Avenue and put up skyscrapers. So I think we should reach out to them with a letter or a call. I see I have a hand raised. Christopher LeBron. Chris.
Thank you so much, Chair. And Jesse, you're absolutely right. This committee has been calling for some remediation within preservation in the Clinton Special Zoning District for quite some time now. I have a question because I jumped on my browser real quick. This is in relation to West 46th Street, which has been quite the problem, as you stated. It is up for sale, $11.7 million for both buildings. We've known them to be illegal Airbnb hotels for quite some time now. What actions can we take? It's actually marked under Cushman Wakefield. The broker's name is Andrew Barry. You can pick everything up. There's a directors listed on there as well. What can we do to make sure that people aren't buying these rent stabilized apartments that have been illegally taken off the market, and then presume the right to demo or the right to turn them into luxury apartments? For quite some time now, people have known me as someone who's been active in pushing out illegal hotels in a neighborhood, but the state and the city has yet to remediate those lost apartments from rent stabilization to luxury. Most of the time, those apartments that we've known to be rent stabilized never return. Pardon me, I just got an update from the New York Times. I hope everyone did too. And it caused my phone to shift. But what can we do to truly preserve these apartments as rent stabilized apartments, knowing full well that these buildings are now being listed as on market as just general buildings to do what you please, or what one pleases.
Chris, I'm going to call on Joe as a developer of affordable housing. What's our step with this? Chris raises a good point.
Well, I would suggest that the committee propose letters to both, in this case, the owners of the 47th and the really all three sites, just reiterating, here are the provisions of the special zoning district, but specifically we must make sure we notify the corner of 48th and 9th are the whole Carl Mazzella buildings. It's 6 buildings that are in a grouping. When they noted that they purchased them, they talked about they have a lot of air rights and they can build a lot more. They're just incorrect. They don't understand that the FAR is 4.2, not 6.02. So just to write to them to say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, and really invite them to come to the board so we can try to proactively deal with these issues. I would do that both with 46th and 48th Street and write a slightly different letter to 47th Street just to invite them to come and figure out a resolution with us. That's what I would propose as 3 separate letters.
Okay, we have a proposal for 3 separate letters that Joe is going to write. So do we have a second on that?
I would second, JD, if I can make sure that this letter is CC'd to HPD. There's been a larger conversation, Joe, over the last couple of years. I've brought it up a few times. The math at HPD and DOB does not make sense. There are permits that are being put in for demos in a special district, and they're being allowed We not only need to make sure that these building owners know what's going on, but that the city understands what a special district is, and that the moment a permit as such has been presented to them or requested to them, that it triggers a sequence of actions that lead over to the CB manager, district manager, so that way we can address that as quickly as possible before we see a building like 343 lose its fourth floor.
But we especially want to know on 46th Street that the owner created a problem which may have created structural damage, and he should not be rewarded for structurally damaging his building. And then the Department of Building steps in and says it's structurally unsound and gets around the zoning requirement. So that's the thing, we should just wrap it all together, all three buildings, the same sort of letter, I think.
Okay, we have a proposal for 3 letters. We have a second on that. Jesse, did you have your hand up?
It's unique that we're voting on one vote for 3 letters. So I just want to make sure we give appropriate time for committee members to understand that what you're voting on. And if that's everybody's okay with that, if there's any issues that they want to pull out a particular letter, then I think we should just make sure we give that moment to let them do that. If not, then we can go ahead and vote on all 3 letters. But it's a unique.
Good point, Jesse. So we're writing a letter about 46th Street. There are 2 buildings there, 1 or 2 buildings, at least the same owner has 2 buildings, I believe. And we're writing a letter to get them to meet with us and talk about things. We're also the same thing on 48th Street to write to the owner of that building and the buildings on 9th to point out the land use zoning issues. Is that correct? And the 3rd letter, what's the 3rd letter for 40?
Is asking 47th Street, pointing out those same issues, but requesting them meet with us in the Department of Buildings to come up with a solution.
Thank you, Joe. So we have 3 different letters. They're very similar. We have a second on all 3. Any questions about any of these letters? I guess not. So all in favor of writing these letters, please just, anybody opposed to this? Anybody present but not eligible? So thank you for that. Jesse, I've lost my, oh, there I am. Okay, thank you for that. And again, thank you, committee, and thank you, community, listening in. This was an important series of issues to resolve. And I know some people are on who live next door to that building on 47th Street. And I hope they feel a little more comfortable tonight.
JD.
Dale. Yes, Dale.
Yeah, I had my hand up. I was going to ask this of the owner developers, but I guess I'm gonna direct this mostly at Joe. On the following up on your mention of an owner's due diligence, an obligation to know about the special zoning. I'm wondering if there is a lawyer, an advisor, or a consultant of some sort who is guiding some of these owners or many of these owners through this process of skirting the zoning. And I wonder if we can ask them to say, to tell us who's their representation and who are they talking to in the process of acquiring and doing the due diligence for this property. Because it seems like it's a pattern, and it might be a pattern that's just organically occurring to a group of greedy people who want to knock down buildings that shouldn't be knocked down. But I suspect that there might be a professional who's making a cottage industry out of this. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, we're actually, this is number 17, 18, and 19 that we're dealing with in this grouping. And I think there is a discussion in the real estate industry in general that the regulations are not being enforced if you can get far enough. So I think when we sit with this owner who has said he has actually done many buildings or renovated many buildings, his story changed from the beginning of the discussion to the second part of it. So anyone who is buying a piece of property in the city of New York does basic zoning research to understand what's what. And I find it incredible that somebody would not know this is in a district that prohibits demolition. So,
I mean, one way or another, it seems that they feel empowered that they have a set of actions that they can skirt the zoning.
Right.
And
Hopefully new administration, new ideas, the
Yeah.
idea of preserving, not just building, so we don't lose things on the way out. The building on 48th Street is 20 apartments. So.
To that point though, JD, you're on mute still.
Go ahead.
Dale, you're pointing out to a pattern, and this committee has become well educated in these excuses. Joe is bringing up a great point that there probably are larger conversations within the real estate community as to how to get around this and where to push and what certain language should be used. From what I understand, if we look back, and this is only in reference to 343, when the proposed project ended up on patch or curb, it still had the original facade of 343. They were just going to add another level on there. Now there's mold, right? Then when they took off the fourth story, they decided they were going to take off the entire building, apparently now, but in patch, that wasn't the case back in 2021. Now there's mold and the whole building has to go. So you're absolutely right to say that there may be lawyers, there may be lobbyists involved in this movement to undermine special zoning districts, to undermine the rent stabilization protections that we've known to enjoy throughout New York City.
That's a good point, Chris, and Dale, excellent point. Also, we don't want to let DOB off the hook. And certainly the relationship between the lawyers, the developers, and DOB is certainly something that we can question once again. But anyway, thank you both. Good ideas. Thank you, committee. We're going to move on now to 2 items on the agenda. Items we know about, we've dealt with before. There are 2 sites that are scheduled to be developed. One is called the DEP site for short. It's on 10th Avenue between 48th and 49th Street. The other site is the MTA, so-called MTA site on 9th Avenue between 54th and 55th. We have dealt with this many times. This goes back many, many years when those 2 city-owned sites were promised to this community to be developed as moderate and middle income housing. Subsequently, 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, that suddenly changed. We are going to hear tonight, first of all, from the developer of the DEP site, the developers, I should say, and this is just going to be an informational presentation about what's going to go on. The second presentation is going to be about the MTA site. Now, the MTA site has been certified. That means the clock is ticking. And we have 60 days from now to respond to the MTA site, and tell the people what we think, and then it goes to the borough president, then to city planning, then to the council. So we're going to have a very lively discussion tonight, I hope. It's very important for the community. I just want to emphasize one thing. There are no villains here. There are no villains. The developers are not villains. They're doing the best they can. And they are listening to the community and trying to work with us. The Housing Works is not a villain. They are an organization that does wonderful work for people in need of help. They are not a villain. The Actors Fund, well, actors are villains. I don't know about actors, but they're not a villain either. HPD is doing the best it can, following its marching orders to develop these sites. But least of all, the community is not a villain here. This is not a NIMBY community. This is the San Francisco of communities in New York. We are welcoming, and we try to do the best we can to bring in supportive housing and social services and low income housing. So there are no villains here. Nevertheless, everybody should express in strong terms, firm terms, what they feel and what they think, because we will have 30 days, 45 days to keep working to make this a project we can all sort of live with. So with that encouragement, I'm going to ask Douglaston or Actors Fund to take us away and tell us about the DEP site on 10th Avenue and what your plans are for the development.
And JD, we've just hit 103 participants at the meeting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
104 just now.
Okay. I see Barbara Davis there. Barbara, who's going, welcome Barbara from Actors Fund. Who's going to take us through this?
Thank you. I think we're going to start with Joel.
Yeah, and hi everyone. This is Joel Colkman from Douglaston. I actually will. Our HPD colleagues are going to kick things off here, but maybe before we do that, we just kind of announce who from Douglaston and Actors Fund and the team are here tonight. So from Douglaston, you have myself, Joel Colkman. You have Stephen Charno and Arden Sokolow. And we also have, as everyone knows, Barbara Davis and Daniel Arno from the Actors Fund. They're both on. And Paul Carr, our architect from S9 Architects, should be on as well. Paul, are you on?
I am.
Great.
And he is also Joel Colkman.
You're on as Joel. Paul.
I really sent that link around. So that's our team. But with that, I'll hand it over to Melissa Auten from HPD to kick things off.
Thank you, Joel. Welcome, Melissa.
Hey, hi everyone. Just a real quick housekeeping item. Janine, should I share the presentation or will you share it, or Jesse?
I don't have a copy of the presentation. Jesse, is it okay for them to share it?
Yeah, we gave you, Melissa, we gave you the ability to share.
Oh, okay, great. Hold on with me 1 second. I'm very not technologically great. So just 1 minute and I'll pull it up.
Melissa, if you want, I can share it to you. I have it here.
Yes, because we know, Felipe, you're much better at these things.
No problem. Give me one.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and kick it off while Felipe's pulling it up and introduce myself. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Melissa Auten. I'm a senior planner with the Manhattan Planning Team. And we already did introductions with all our other partners that are here on the development side. I'll just say we have several other colleagues from HPD here tonight. And we are pleased to be here tonight to discuss the DEP site, also known as Rialto West project. We previously brought this project before the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee in November of 2020. And we are here tonight to provide some updates as part of our pre-Uler presentation and process. The proposal consists of the new construction of an approximately 8-story building consisting of approximately 158 affordable residential units and ground floor community facility space. The site is located, Felipe, can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. On block 1077, lot 29, which is along 10th Avenue between West 48th and 49th Streets.
Sorry, which slide do you have in front of you? Just
I have the intro slide.
It's still the cover sheet.
Yeah, could you go to the next one?
Yeah, okay, good to know, because in my screen I see the proposed land use section. So give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. What about now?
Same.
It's still the cover.
What? Okay, let me get off. I had it in presentation view. All right. I gotta mute myself now.
So I'll go back and just now that
can you make it full screen so we can see it?
You know, I tried that, and that's when I couldn't like move the slides. Let me try.
There you go, full screen right there.
Yeah, I know, but I couldn't move the slides. So give me 1 second. Okay, let's try it now. What do you see there now?
Yeah, it's not moving. It's staying on.
Yeah, it's the site overview slide, Felipe.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Joel, do you want to try maybe?
I would need to also.
You're
be in
thinking,
here.
Felipe, it's just the view mode you have it in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just leave it outside of the the mode you had it before where you flipped through.
I'll put on my reading glasses, Joe.
I got them on.
I'm trying to wait.
I'm downloading it now, so hopefully I can show it to you guys.
Hey, Jesse, you give it a go.
Thank you. First time that this happened to me.
Give me a moment, please.
It happens to all of us, Felipe, all the time. This stuff happens.
Yeah. All right, I'll wait. So I guess I'm going to stop sharing.
While we're waiting, Melissa, you said 8 stories. Could you give that in feet?
That's gonna be approximately 77 feet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You guys, what do you guys see now?
I see your email.
That is not what you should be seeing. Never mind. Hold on one second here. That better?
It is.
Yes. It appears that you have a good Adobe license. So thank you. I do not. Great, thank you. So again, the site's located at block 1077, lot 29, which is along 10th Avenue between West 48th and West 49th Streets. The site was previously used for construction staging area for the Manhattan Water Shaft Tunnel number 3. And the site also contains a rail cut for the Amtrak Empire Line right-of-way. The site will be split into 2 tax lots, the western portion of the site, which will be conveyed to the project sponsor and constructed with the proposed affordable housing development. You may hear us refer to this portion of the site as the development site. Then there will also be the eastern tax lot, which will remain under city ownership and be constructed by the project sponsor with an open space that will be maintained and managed by the Department of Parks and Recreation. You may notice that we refer to this area as the open space area, and then the 2 tax lots together, you might hear us call that the project area. In order to facilitate the project, if you could go to the next slide, be great. Thank you. The following land use actions are needed: designation of an urban development action area and approval of an urban development action area project. We're also proposing a zoning text amendment establishing a new special permit section 96-112. Under this, the existing height and setback special permit provisions under section 96-104 would be moved under this section, along with a new provision that allows waivers on the DEP site, as well as the MTA site, which you will hear about later on tonight. Also seeking a special permit pursuant to the new zoning resolution section 96-112 to modify height and setback regulations to permit a building height of approximately 77 feet and to modify rear yard equivalents on the development site. Another special permit pursuant to section 74-681 to build the proposed development over the Amtrak right-of-way. Next slide, please. And then also disposition of easements, the first being an easement for light and air purposes, and the second being an easement to utilize unused development rights from the future open area, space area on the development site. So with that overview, I will turn it over to Joel Kolkman of Douglaston Development to provide further details on the proposed project.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. So just an overview of our program here. As Melissa said, the proposed building is 8 stories and 77 feet tall, which aligns with the Western Rail Yard's points of agreement. And within the building, we'll have 158 permanently affordable housing units. And the unit mix for those units, we have at least 50, well, we have over 50% of the units as 2 and 3 bedrooms, which again aligns with the points of agreement. And the breakdown of the unit mix is as follows. We have 22% studios, 27% 1 bedrooms, 41% 2 bedrooms, and 10% 3 bedrooms. Also within the building, we'll have an on-site laundry room, we'll have a fitness room, we'll have bike storage and a bike room. And we also will be providing Wi-Fi to residents at no cost as well. And this is something you will probably you've probably heard of in many affordable housing or newer affordable housing buildings, and we'll continue to see. Also on the ground floor of our building, we include the public comfort station that supports the adjacent open space. And this comfort station has been coordinated with the Parks Department and specifically to incorporate feedback from the community board, in particular having storage for gardening tools and other things for the open space. So we've made sure that the layout of the public restroom includes storage that is kind of together but separate from the restroom, just as it had been discussed between Parks Department and you all. And you know, we've spoken with you all about how we do have a community facility space on the ground floor of this building that has its frontage and main entrance on West 49th Street. The image you see here is the primary residential entrance on West 48th Street. But at West 49th Street, we've always planned for an arts-related community facility space. And we have an exciting update for you all in terms of the tenant and user for that space. And I'll have Daniel from the Actors Fund talk a bit about that. And if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. It's good to see everyone. Again, my name's Daniel with the Actors Fund. And as Joel mentioned, we're really thrilled and excited to provide an update. We have partnered with Indie Space as our community facility tenant, who will be programming and operating this community facility space. For those of you who are not familiar, Indie Space creates permanent real estate solutions for the indie theater community. And by delivering affordable, creative space for a diversity of performing artists, along with supportive programming, Indie Space will help to preserve and enhance a vital piece of the cultural lives of New Yorkers. And for this project, Indie Space will be partnering with 2 other organizations who have a history in the community district, the Artists Co-op and Waterwell Theater. This partnership will help Indie Space meet their goals of operating theater, subsidized rental space, and community space. Both of these organizations have a history in the community district and are really in need of long-term sustainable space to operate. So we really hope this is a solution for them. Both of these organizations will serve as anchor subtenants of the space and provide co-working, rehearsal, development space for their artists and members of the community, as well as the broader Indie Space community. And as some of you might know, Waterwell Theater, they already have a partnership with the Professional Performing Arts School right down the block on 48th Street. So they're planning to continue that programming in the community facility. And Indie Space themselves will also be dedicating one of the rehearsal spaces to historically excluded artists who are really in need of long-term space. So we're really thrilled to be partnering with Indie Space. They're a pillar in the arts and cultural community. And I think we're joined by Randy Berry and Paul, who head up the organization. So thank you for joining us tonight. And I think that's it on the community facility. I'll hand it back to you, Joel.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, and if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a bit about the design. All right. So our building design was really inspired by the kind of the mix of uses, but really a mix of characters, I should say, but really the industrial character of the West Side. You see here, larger format windows. We're using a lot of brick, both brick and metal panels, but in particular the brick material goes back to the west to that industrial loft style, and also aligns with a lot of the buildings you see immediately surrounding the building as well. As it relates to the materials, we're using brick and metal panels to break up the facade a bit. As you can see, we have a long facade along the open space, so the use of materials helps break that up. But also, we're using it to help bring down the scale of the building. As you can see here, right to this is on 48th Street again, this view, we have, walk-up buildings. And so we're using the brick to create a consistent roof line to help, again, bring down the scale of our building, to help create that visual point of interest with our neighbors. And then through building wall articulation and materials with the metal panels, go up 2 stories from there. In addition to kind of the overall design intent here, on the sustainability front, we are complying with Enterprise Green Communities 2020. And as part of the new 2020 program, that includes the Energy Star multifamily new construction program. So we have a good amount of energy efficiency and sustainability through those programs as part of this building. Next slide. All right, so our income mix. We are using the HPD mix and match term sheet, so which has us with these income tiers. We have the 15% required formerly homeless set aside. And again, this is a requirement of all affordable housing projects receiving city subsidy going forward. Going from there, we have 25% of the units at 47 to 50% of AMI, 20% of the units at 77 to 80% of AMI, and we have 30% of the units at 100 to 120% of AMI. Since we spoke last, we've added an additional income tier, responding to having higher income, higher units at higher incomes here. So we have a new income band of 100 to 120%, 120 to 130% of AMI, which represents 10% of the units. The income ranges you see here, this represents, on the low end, a studio unit with 1 person. That income on the high end of the range is a 3-bedroom unit with a family of 6 or 7, right? So that is why you see such a large band here, because it's representing all those units and all those different family sizes. And I know this is something we'll talk more about tonight. So let's go to the next slide. This is just our timeline and kind of milestones to date and going forward. We designated the RFP in the winter of 2019. We've had several meetings with the leadership of Community Board 4, but also we came to you last November of 2020. We're here again in anticipation of our certification of this project in the winter of this year. And then with that timeline, we would be seeking Uler approval in the summer, fall, depending on exactly when we certify. So those are our slides.
Joel, Melissa, Daniel, thank you so much for that. I'm sure there will be questions. As you know, Joel, this was supposed to be 100% moderate middle. It seems to have, at the moment, to be 60% low income. So I'm sure there will be some questions about that, but thank you for the presentation, all of you, and Barbara. I'm sure there'll be questions. Anybody want to start off? Oh, no questions whatsoever. Well.
All right, let's go.
No, my hand is raised.
I'm so sorry. Sometimes I can't see that hand. It's very pale. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
If you look on the participants list instead, you'll see where hands are raised.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It keeps them in order. And, I think this is directed not just at the development team and Actors Fund, but, Joe and JD, you might be able to answer this for me as well. We've talked a lot about these income bands and the fact that this commitment was made for this property and MTA to be moderate to middle income. And we're now getting the lowest income bands included. So I'm glad to see that there are some of the higher income bands now being added in, but I'm still seeing holes. That is something else we strive to avoid, is income band holes. And I see 3 holes between 27 and 47%, between 50 and 77%, and between 80 and 100%. And is there some strategy as to why those holes are there, or is there a strategy as to how we can eliminate those holes?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll start and HPD can pick it up. So again, you pointed out, so we do have 60% of our units are the 80% and below, and that's aligned with the mix and match term sheet, and we're using these the tax credit tiers. So you have these pretty small bands with the tax credit tiers, like the 47 to 50, the 77 to 80. I would actually defer to HPD on why those bands are so small, the tax credits, but
could we not, because our goal is to arrive at a solution here, and we don't need to go into, here's why it must be done in this way. We're gonna try to make the whole thing work. That is our goal always on this board. And that's why I think we're gonna direct a lot of stuff to the developer, not just to HPD, okay? I would appreciate that.
Okay, but in terms of the income mix, it is a collaboration between HPD and the development team. So it definitely requires their input and feedback on this as well.
But you buy and own the building end of the day, and has to work for you financially.
Paul, thank you. Good question. That's a concern. I see Dale has a.
Yeah, and unresolved.
And unresolved. Good point. Dale.
I just want to thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just to follow up on Paul Devlin's question, I mean, we have our specific reasons why we don't want gaps in the income bands. It's going to be I've walked people through the process of applying for these units. It's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah.
And we don't want people showing up at the door potentially and saying, this is a lovely building. I would like to live here. I live or work in this neighborhood. I like this neighborhood. Let me try, and find that they are immediately disqualified on the basis of gaps in the income bands. That's what we're trying to avoid. That could be seen as discriminatory on its face. So I really want to press you to finesse these bands, and it doesn't seem that complicated. I know what you're dealing with, so that there is full representation in a range of incomes, so that there is we hold out the possibility that anyone within this range can walk in and potentially find a unit.
Good point. Good point, Dale. And as Dale points out, it certainly is achievable. Done it before. Thanks, Dale. Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have two things. First, on the AMIs. Thank you for moving some of the AMIs a little bit higher. That's very good. It's very helpful to know that we're moving towards some kind of resolution on the AMI issue here. But first requirement and request is that when you come back to us and start the process after you're certified in early February and mid-February, that you come to us with a plan that eliminates any donut holes and any gaps. That to me is a basic thing. So as Dale has said, to enable people, they apply once and they fit somewhere in that income band. And they know they have at least a fighting chance, as opposed to being a little bit too high or a little bit too low, depending upon the apartment size. So we say that to you. Yes, we need to figure out a way to decrease some of the lower income, get some of the more moderate up. We're moving in that direction. We think we can get to a good solution, but let's eliminate the gaps. The second thing is, we know that your income bands are based upon your financing. And you mentioned low-income housing tax credits. I will say again, as I mentioned in the meeting that the board had as a briefing with HPD in December, there's a $45 million set aside for these two projects. Whatever gaps you may have in financing, if you have to move the income bands around, those funds were committed as part of the Western Rail Yards points of agreement, and you should be able to have them allocated. And we will work with our council member, the new borough president, and the mayor's office to ensure that if there is a change in financing required by making this project to be more seamless and less donut holes, that you have access to those funds to fill that financing gap. So I want to say that publicly to you and also to HPD. I have a separate question entirely, JD. and that's about the zoning. So you noted that we have this new 96-112. Now, we were informed of this new section in December. We received the text only on the 10th of January. And there's a number of items in that text that are absolutely nothing we've asked for, that have and it's a district-wide change throughout the whole preservation area. We are not comfortable with that. The community board is not comfortable, and the wider community, as they're learning about it, is certainly not comfortable with it, with this zoning text change. Is there any reason whatsoever that I understand most of your setback issues can be dealt with in the building over the rail cut as part of that, but the rear yard equivalent is the one that can't be handled through the special permit for building over the rail cut. Is there any reason that we can't propose a modification to the rear yard section that just speaks very narrowly to another paragraph in that or something, saying for a building next to public open space, near a water tunnel over a rail cut? So it just is something to make this project happen, as opposed to the idea that somehow that very large generic change on MTA is needed for you. I don't think it's needed for you at all. So is there anything, I just put this to Steve and to Joel, that we cannot look at and explore for that?
I'll say, I mean, what you just described is definitely a mechanism that would work, but as Joe, especially, this is being worked through with city planning and HPD. And so those are the kind of the agencies coordinating all of this and with that, but we can achieve the rear yard equivalent. I couldn't say that we couldn't do it that way. Yeah. Okay,
because we just want to pursue something as we go into Uler that has less impact and less precedent. And we understand the current route that HPD and DCP have chosen. It doesn't mean that as part of the political settlement and compromise that that's the one we'll end up with. We want to make sure that we don't go down a road that is not possible to get to a solution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
JD, you're on mute.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joel. I want to go to the community now. I'm going to ask Janine.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify one point I think Joe made about the $40 million funds from HP. So just to be clear, there's no 40 million funds set aside. This was just a guarantee by a previous administration that when the time came, there would be city subsidy put towards the project.
Actually, the Western Rail Yard Points of Agreement says there will be 40 million, and it does not say from existing programs. I sat in the room where that was negotiated, and that was the actual fact. So not quite correct, because it's not that there's a set aside sitting in an account, but it was understood to be over and above any existing programs. That's why it was put in that way.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Joe. Janine, I'm going to go to the community. If the block president of West 47th, 48th, is she with us, Elka? I would ask to put her up first.
Yeah, she's in, and I'm transferring her to panelist so she can speak.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Elka.
She's on mute.
Okay.
Oh,
there she
Here
is.
I am. Okay. Hi, everyone. First, thank you very much for this presentation. Very informative, certainly better than it's been in the past. Just two concerns. Anytime there's some change proposed for our special Clinton district, I kind of get extremely concerned. So I don't know how we remedy that, but I get nervous about that, for the record. And also, as all of you know, that it was agreed a number of years ago that it would be moderate and middle income housing. I'm glad to see that we're getting a little bit closer to that, although we could it would be good to increase the bands a little bit. So thank you.
Janine, who else do we have?
There's a phone number that ends in 693. They had their hand up.
Are you there, 693?
If not, there's Ina and Catherine Lafferty.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for unmuting. My name is Marcel Lutess, and I was listening to this meeting with great interest because I'm a shareholder of 354 West 48th Street, which is a building directly adjacent to 356 West 48th Street, which was mentioned. And so, you know, I really took it to heart in terms of that discussion, which, you know, concluded with drafting the letters to make sure that these regulations are fully understood and fully complied with by developers. Yeah, we've dealt with, of course, the building, you know, being untenanted with the rat issues and so forth, which, you know, normally frighten people who, you know, walk by for years now. Various people in our building, our board of directors has dealt with, contacted HPD, they've contacted the city, so on and so forth. And with this specter now of the redevelopment, you know, in whatever form that takes, it is, you know, kind of frightening because these buildings are at least from the 1920s, if not, you know, earlier than that. You normally have, you know, the shifting of the buildings, things like that for this age. So, you know, besides the, you know, just the stress on the neighborhood from having something that would violate air rights built right next to our building, there's also the issue of exactly how our buildings, which are actually connected, the 352, 354 West 48th Street HDFC, are two buildings, but there's actually a triplet, and 356 is the third building. So it is connected in a very, very integrated way. And so say that something were to happen, God forbidding, but that something were to happen where they were to demolish that building, it seems like that would put our buildings and others, I'm sure, are in similar circumstances around the neighborhood in grave, grave danger. And then you get into areas of liability and all kinds of things like that, you know, where we're out of our league. So I just wanted to mention these aspects because people in our buildings are listening. We are aware of the circumstances, but we're also imminently aware of, you know, the danger that's posed, you know, directly to the physical structure of our living space by any potential development in our communities. And this is beyond and in addition to any kind of legal precedents and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that and thank you very, very much for your discussions this evening.
Thank you. You raise a very important issue. And yes, we need to be very concerned about the safety of everybody. Thank you for that. Janine, I don't know if Leslie Murphy is with us. She's a board member. She's also, she would like to speak. I don't know if we can bring her up.
Okay, I'm promoting her to panelist.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Don't you have Kat Lafferty next?
It's Kat and then Ina.
I actually, JD, I'm sorry, I actually am waiting for the MTA site.
Gotcha.
Comment on that.
Kat, are you with us?
I am with you. Hello. Thank you, JD.
Welcome, Kat.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name is Kat Lafferty, Catherine. I've lived on West 48th Street for 22 and a half years, happily in a walk-up building. The open space, thank you for your presentation. I went to the community input initially about this space in 2018. And I just want to focus on the open space portion of the proposed development. I am, as some of you know, a long-time steering committee member of the Clinton Community Garden, which is on West 48th Street and is one of the pioneering green gorillas community gardens in New York City. And I'm also a gardener in Hell's Kitchen Park, which is directly diagonally across from the proposed open space. So I just want to raise a concern, which is based on some of these renderings, what we thought would be a DEP parks site that would be a place for kids to play and for some gardening activities to happen seems to be more of a pass-through kind of zone with landscaping. So I just want to circle back and remind everyone that we are 2 blocks from the Hudson in this particular site, the Hudson River, and how wonderful it would be to have some meaningful water educational, didactic plates or some fountains or some didactic materials sharing how we get our water. Our neighborhood, in my time living there, has not only had an explosion of dogs, but an explosion of children. And how wonderful would it be to have this space, the open space section, be an important educational site for kids, as well as, a gardening opportunity. Our wait list for the Clinton Community Garden is 7 years long to get a plot. So while I'm so thrilled that you've mentioned spaces for, gardening materials and things, I just really hope you'll continue a dialogue with the community and those of us who are engaged community gardeners who, and also I'm a member of the West 47th, 48th Street Blocks Association. I just hope that you will have more micro level input meetings with us, not just with the community board, because this is an open space that hopefully will be, welcome to be used by not just the residents of this new development, but by the community members at large. And I just feel like there are so many inherent opportunities in this space, the open space, and we're so lucky to have an open space. And I don't want the discussion of the building aspect of the project to drown out the possibilities in the open space component. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kat. Very good point. I'm going to urge Kat and all of us to also go to the waterfront committee of the board to keep pushing this, developing this open space. As Kat points out, it's very important. Thank you. I believe there's Inez, and then I know Jeffrey Lefrancois. I'm sorry, did I get the name right? Inez?
No, it's Ina.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. This is the first time I've seen these income bands, and I wonder how much research has been done in looking at families and how many children they have. You have a very high income plateau for the 10% and a very small number of apartments that have 3 bedrooms. And how much consideration is given to an average family with an income of less than your income band who has 4, 5, or more kids? I mean, we're not all 2-parent, 1.5-child families. And I wonder if we're imposing our middle or upper middle class culture on medium and low income folks. It often happens that we are in a bubble. Are we on a bubble in this?
Good question, Ina. She raises a good issue. How did you determine this? How are these income bands determined?
The income band, well, I think it's the income bands and the unit mix combined, right? But the income bands were determined based off of, again, trying to be as responsive as possible to desires for upper income units, while also complying with HPD term sheet requirements, and looking again. at the range of incomes that are within the broader district as well, and being responsive to that.
I know, I can speak to that a bit.
I don't understand that answer.
If
Yeah,
I give you some actual information as opposed to theory. My office did an affordable housing building on West 53rd Street between 10th and 11th Avenues, 103 units. And it was moderate middle income. And what we found is the majority of households are either 2 or 3 children, mostly 2. So it's the majority are 2 bedrooms you need, and the minority are 3 bedrooms. It is very, very common for that moderate and middle income group to be 2 civil servants with 1, 2, or 3 children. So there was very little problem to fill units for that income band. These are people who cannot compete in the market because in our neighborhood, as you know, a 1-bedroom starts at $3,800, a 2-bedroom at $5,500. People making those income ranges simply cannot afford that because it's the market rate is so high. That's why the community has been very active on trying to make sure we both accommodate the growing number of families that just can't afford the market. At the same time, different communities have different demographics. We don't have a lot of families with 5 and 6 children. That is not the majority in our district. That's just based upon empirical evidence in my work in affordable housing. Does that help you a little bit to understand?
yes, it does. It makes me feel much more confident about this project. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Ina, for raising that. I would also point out the community board has said the homeless component of the building should be devoted to families.
Yes.
We're very insistent, but thank you, Ina. Jeffrey, you were with us, and I think
JD, you took care of my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Janine, do we have speakers? Janine.
Yes, we have Blake up next.
Blake, welcome. Are you there, Blake?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. You guys are doing fabulous work. I'm very impressed. Thank you.
You can say that again. Could you repeat that?
As often as you want. Seems there's a bit of an echo, but I'm a shareholder at 341 West 47th Street. And I just want to say that some of the comments that the developers have made don't mesh very well with what they've told us in many long conversations on our stoop. So I'm sort of surprised at some of the things that are being claimed. For instance, there's never been a mention of mold before until, in fact, they have demolished the building. And now we have a mold problem in our building because of moisture coming through our shared wall. We're very, very concerned, of course, about what will happen with that building, the structural problems with the fire that was there not that long ago, which could, of course, have easily spread to our building. It was just luck that it didn't. I'm wondering if there's any way to force a timeline for the resolution of these problems. We're worried that this could drag on forever and ever and ever, which would be really, really dangerous for everyone. There are 11 units in our building, and we're all extremely concerned about that. So that's one question. And I'm wondering also about a difference between demolition and the kind of really radical renovations that they had talked about. Their architect's renderings had no trace of a visual resemblance to what was there prior to that when we got here 10 years ago. I'm wondering what the difference is between demolishing it and building a brand new modernist building or rebuilding it as it used to be. Can you give me some idea of what the possibilities are so that our building doesn't suffer?
I can assure you that this board will be very adamant about building something that's in context with the rest of the neighborhood. I know Dale can speak to this, Joe can speak to this, Brian can speak to this. It's a concern we all share, the fabric of the neighborhood, the look of the neighborhood. So you raise a good point. As to the timetable, everything takes, what, 5 years in this city? I don't know, Blake, but there is an urgency about this to protect the neighbors next door. So we'll take that into consideration. Very important. Joe?
I would just say, please stay in touch with Jesse, because the goal is to get the owner to the table, which he showed up for the first time today to have a real conversation. And we would set a meeting with the Department of Buildings and the owner. And if the owner does not comply, we would ask HPD to step in to just preserve the building in the meantime. no one can be forced to do anything, but we certainly can make sure they don't create self-fulfilling prophecy. So they make it worse and worse. Yes, of course they have mold. They removed part of the facade. How could you not have mold in a building that's open to the elements? So they're not being direct, but if we sit down with them, we've had some success before. It does take a long time. We've had some success.
Thank you, Joe. Blake, thank you. And please keep in touch. Jesse will keep in touch. We'll all keep in touch about this. Janine, are there other speakers?
No, there's no more hands.
No more?
No more hands.
Thank you. We're going to move on, but before we do, I want to
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, JD. Somebody just raised their hands. Richard Morans.
Richard Marins. Welcome, Richard. Are you there with us, Richard?
He's on mute.
Richard on mute. That's unheard of. Richard?
Can you hear me?
There you are. Welcome.
Just
Richard.
quick question. Is there a neighborhood preference in this at all?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes, there will be.
Can you say what it
What
is?
is that?
It should be 50%.
The standard 50%.
Also, can you tell us when you're going to be, when you expect to be certified for Uler?
For Uler?
Yeah.
Winter 2022 is what we're saying right now.
When, sorry?
We're saying Q1 of 2022. So we expect soon.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Joel, Daniel, everybody. I want to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you for working with the community, especially about the open site, the bathroom for the children, for members of the community, the storage room.
48. I don't know what to say.
I'm sorry, Richard?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you for working with us. Please continue to work with us because the income bands need to get better than they are. Again, 60% low income roughly, and when it was supposed to be 100% moderate middle. Keep working with us, please. We understand financial constraints, we understand that, but we're hoping when you come back to us after you're certified that we can move on up. But otherwise, thank you for everything that you're doing and for working with us.
And we appreciate how much your building is trying to fit into the neighborhood. That's really an important thing.
Yeah.
Right.
No, thank you all. Thank you all for the comments.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. I hope we will continue to have a good night. Our next item, the main event, is the MTA site on 9th Avenue between 54th and 55th Street. I don't know who's here from HPD. Ahmed, are you with us tonight? I'm not sure. From HPD.
No, Ahmed's not. It'll be James and Felipe. I'm Paris. I'm with HPD, but this is James and Felipe's show tonight.
Paris, you got to fix your echo. It's wild.
Oh, sorry about that. How weird.
So JD, I will kick off the presentation. You're muted, JD.
Before you do, I want to welcome everybody from Housing Works, from HPD, and from Hudson, and from the community who are with us tonight and who I'm sure will want to speak, as well as the committee, about this. I know you gave us a presentation. I think it was recently, like in December. Am I correct? There was a presentation, and as you know, the board wrote a letter, and I think the vote was 44-0 to reject what we had heard. So I'm hopeful, because I'm optimistic that
it was October, JD.
It was October. Thank you, Chris. That we were going to see some more palatable presentation tonight and to be able to discuss it. So without further ado, HPD, you're going to take this? I'm sorry, who's going to take the lead on this?
I'll start, JD, Felipe.
Felipe, welcome, Felipe. Thank you.
Nice to see you, JD.
And please introduce your team if you want to.
I will. First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight with all of you guys. And thank you for hosting us. Quick question, JD, to avoid situations as the ones that we experienced a few minutes ago, Jesse, is it possible for you to put up the presentation?
I'm working on it now, Felipe. I'm working on it now. Give me one moment.
He's working on it. Felipe, could you maybe introduce your team now while we're waiting?
Absolutely. So again, good evening, everyone. My name is Felipe Cortez. I am the Deputy Director of the Manhattan Planning Team in the Office of Neighborhood Strategies at HPD. With me tonight are my colleagues, James Hall, who is a Manhattan planner, part of my team, Paris Stratter, Assistant Commissioner of Planning and Pre-Development at the Office of Neighborhood Strategies, and our development partners from Hudson Companies and Housing Works. Members of our development partners will introduce themselves later, but I see a few of them as Sarah Pfizer, Aaron Kaufman, and others. As I mentioned before, as a first step on the Uler process, we are excited to be here tonight presenting the Uler application to the Land Use Committee of Community Board number 4. The Leary project is located at 806 9th Avenue.
Wrong one, Jesse.
I'm sorry, Felipe. If we could put up, I think the DEP site's up. If we could put up the Lirio presentation.
Take your time, Jesse. No problem.
No worries.
No.
Just don't want to.
I got it. Don't worry about it. It's ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'll give Jesse one second.
Perfect. Felipe, you seeing it?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So again, as I was saying, the Deliria project is located at 806 9th Avenue between 53rd and 54th Streets on block 1044 and parts of Lot 3 in Manhattan, in the Manhattan Scales Kitchen neighborhood. The proposed project will be a new 9-story building with approximately 112 units of affordable and supportive housing, along with ground floor retail space and office space for the adjacent MTA building. As you can see, the agenda of tonight includes the introductions, which I just went through. I'm going to briefly mention the land use sections. Then I will pass the presentation to the development team to give us a project overview. And then we'll present the timeline for the project, specifically the anticipated Uler timeline. And then we'll end up the presentation with questions. So please keep your questions in hand so we can answer them at the end. I believe, Jesse, you can move on to the next one. As I mentioned, the development team is comprised of the Hudson Companies and Housing Works. The development team was designated on March 25th of 2019. This application was certified early this month on January 3rd.
Yeah, that's
2022. No problem.
2022. Yeah, sorry.
And the applicant for this Uler application is HPD. The land use actions necessary to facilitate this project include a zoning map amendment, a zoning text amendment, a special permit, and the disposition of city-owned property and the city acquisition of the future MTA condo in the new building. As mentioned briefly before, I will pass the project as certified early this month. And with that said, I will hand the presentation over to the development team, who will give us more details of the proposed project and introduce themselves. So, Sarah.
Great, thank you, Felipe. I'm Sarah Pfizer. I'm a development director at the Hudson Companies. Thank you to the Land Use Committee for having us here again today. We're happy to be back. I'm joined by my colleagues at Hudson, Aaron, Michael, and Vanessa. And on the Housing Works side, we have Andrew, Colton, and Olivia. We also have our architect here, Brian McFarland at Center Ready, as well as our land use council. We have Judy Gallant and Jed Weiss from Bryan Cave. And finally, we're also joined by Moonsun and Jessica at the MTA. So a brief intro into Hudson. We've been developing in all 5 boroughs for the last 35 years across a range of incomes. We have completed over 7,800 residential units to date, and we have 5,000 more in the pipeline. We've also developed 250,000 square feet of commercial space, which equates to about 100 neighborhood stores, mostly in the ground floors of our mixed-use buildings. And many of our projects are public-private partnerships or come to us through city-run RFPs like the Lirio. So we do have extensive experience working with government agencies in planning and executing projects. And finally, we're committed to environmental sustainability across our portfolio. In 2017, we completed the house at Cornell Tech on Roosevelt Island, which was the largest and tallest passive house building at the time that it was completed in the world. So we hope to bring that same level of environmental stewardship here to the Lirio. I'll turn it over to Housing Works for a brief intro. Andrew, are you there?
I am here. I just needed to unmute myself. I'm Andrew Comey, Senior Vice President for Housing Development and Operations at Housing Works. JD, thank you for the kind words about Housing Works. We've been around since 1990, providing supportive housing for people living with HIV and AIDS. We currently operate over 700 units of housing for formerly homeless individuals and families living with HIV and AIDS, serious mental illness, substance use disorder, and homeless veterans. We own and manage 20 congregate permanent supportive housing facilities across the city and 6 federally qualified health centers in both Manhattan and Brooklyn. We have one that we are waiting for the DOH to give final approval on 48th Street, right up the block from the Lirio. And many people know us for our successful thrift store enterprises and our bookstore located all over the city of New York. And the revenues from those businesses support all of the services we provide to homeless New Yorkers.
Thanks, Andrew. Next slide. So as you all know, this site was part of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen RFP, which was issued by HPD in April 2018. Hudson and Housing Works were designated for Site A, also known as the MTA Site, in March 2019. And our response, in our response, we proposed permanently affordable housing with supportive housing targeted towards formerly homeless long-term survivors of HIV and AIDS. And this is along with the ground floor retail and the required 30,000 square foot MTA office space. And our proposal is centered around 3 main goals. The first of which is addressing the ongoing AIDS epidemic. So we know that Hell's Kitchen has the highest concentration of residents living with HIV and AIDS in New York City. And it's also the 2nd highest neighborhood for new HIV infections in Manhattan. And on top of that, most people living with HIV in New York are 50 years or older. So we wanted to provide a unique type of supportive housing that would address the needs of this long-term survivor population, who often experience serious illness and aging earlier than others. And this actually inspired the name for the project. The Lirio is named after the Liriodendron tree, which is the oldest living tree in New York City. This tree has witnessed all of New York City's history and, like long-term survivors, has survived and persisted against the odds. Second, sustainable design. We want to practice environmental leadership by integrating green building design and targeting passive house certification. And finally, community investment. We want to invest in placemaking with an activated ground floor program. And we want to leverage investment for maximum community benefits, including MWBE hiring and local construction job placement and training. Next slide. So in order to facilitate the development of the Lirio, we are proposing the following 5 land use actions, and I will walk through these one by one. Next slide. So first is the disposition of development rights from the existing MTA building. So we share a zoning lot. The development site shares a zoning lot with the existing MTA Rail Control Center and Power Control Center. So in order to facilitate further development on the zoning lot, we are proposing to allocate 35,518 square feet of excess development rights available on the zoning lot from the MTA facilities to the Lirio site. The disposition of this negative easement constitutes a disposition of city-owned property. Second is city acquisition of a condominium within the proposed building for the MTA space. So this is, the city will be acquiring the MTA condo, which includes the cellar parking and ground and second floor office spaces. Next slide. So third, we are proposing a zoning text amendment to establish a CPC special permit 96-112, which the DEP team mentioned, to modify lot coverage in the preservation area applicable to the development site. And 4 is a special permit pursuant to 96-112 to modify lot coverage and height and setback regulations applicable to the development site. So there is an existing special permit under 96-104C that allows for certain modifications to height and setback within the special Clinton preservation area. We're proposing to move that to a new section, 96-112, and we're proposing to add a zoning text amendment to the new section that would allow for other bulk modifications other than to floor area. And the bulk modification we are pursuing at the Lirio has to do with lot coverage. So the existing transit facilities on the zoning lot already have a high lot coverage, and adding to the proposed development would not comply with existing lot coverage requirements. Within 100 feet of 9th Avenue, the max lot coverage is 70%, and beyond 100 feet of 9th Avenue, the max lot coverage is 60%. Under the proposed conditions, the lot area within 100 feet of 9th Ave would have 100% lot coverage, and beyond 9th Ave, the combination of the existing MTA facilities and the proposed Lirio would result in a lot coverage of higher than 60%. So in addition, the applicable lot coverage regulations in 96-102 require that a development containing residential uses must provide a minimum of 20% of the lot area of the zoning lot as usable open space. So I want to note that while we are not complying with this requirement, we are providing a landscape terrace that will be accessible to all residents, and it comprises about 32% of the lot area of the development site, which would exceed the 20% requirement if we didn't share a zoning lot with the MTA facilities. I also want to note that the zoning text amendment to establish the special permit is very carefully crafted with the input of DCP so as to be as specific as possible to the MTA and DEP sites. To go into what that means, the special permit only applies to zoning lots with an area of 40,000 square feet, with wide street frontage, and which contain existing public infrastructure. The findings of the special permit also require that there be physical conditions that create practical difficulties. So there are no other privately owned sites within the special Clinton preservation area that would meet the findings of this text amendment. Next slide. And in terms of height and setback, there's an existing special permit in the zoning resolution to allow for height and setback modifications within the special Clinton preservation area, which we are applying for. On 9th Avenue, we are proposing a max height of 85 feet or 8 stories, which is as of right for max height and also consistent with the Western Yards points of agreement and CB4 recommendations. However, the building exceeds the 66-foot max base height within 100 feet of a wide street and will not have the required 10-foot setback, which is shown in the green area of this elevation. This elevation, for context, is if you're looking at the building from 54th Street. So on 54th, we're proposing a max height of 99 feet or 9 stories, which exceeds the max building height of 66 feet beyond 100 feet of 9th Avenue and 85 feet within 100 feet of 9th Avenue. Those are the blue and red areas. There is also no 15-foot setback beyond 100 feet of 9th Avenue, which is the area shown also in blue. So despite all of this, we do comply with the Western Yards points of agreement, which states that the height is not to exceed 99 feet on the mid-block. And the CB4 recommendation further clarified that the height is not to exceed 99 feet beyond 50 feet of 9th Avenue, and we do comply with that. Next slide. So finally, we're proposing to rezone a portion of the block from R8, C15, and R8 districts to C62. This includes the existing MTA facilities, the Midtown Community Court, and the police precinct. And there are a few different reasons for the rezoning. First, there is a commercial floor area deficit on the zoning lot. So the MTA constructed the rail control center under its zoning exemption, and they actually overbuilt the lot with respect to commercial floor area by 70,000 square feet. So in order to have sufficient remaining floor area on the zoning lot for the project's proposed uses, we are zoning to a C62 district, which allows for greater commercial floor area. Second, the proposed zoning would reflect the existing land use of the block. The proposed C62 district would make the existing MTA facilities a conforming use, as well as the existing courthouse and police precinct located east of the RCC. And third, a C62 district would permit the MTA commercial use on the second story. The existing R8 C15 district does not allow commercial use on a second story. So I want to note that while the C62 designation would broaden the range of permitted commercial uses, it is very unlikely that any of the other parcels included in the rezoning would have any increased development potential due to the rezoning. The proposed C62 district will not change the total max FAR allowed of 4.2. It would not change the existing height and setback limitations, nor the yard and lot coverage regulations. Next slide. And here is a tax map showing the boundaries of the proposed rezoning. The development site is outlined in red here. Or the development site. Next slide. Okay, getting into the building program. As I mentioned, we're proposing 112 units of permanently affordable housing, the breakdown of which is 67 units for formerly homeless individuals. 59 of those units would be supportive housing targeted for long-term survivors of HIV and AIDS, as well as 44 units of affordable rental housing up to 80% AMI, and 1 live-in supers unit. We're also proposing about 1,500 square feet of community space for support services, and as I mentioned before, a roughly 5,600 square foot accessible landscape terrace, which would be for all residents. And Housing Works will be providing on-site case management and specialty programming, which Andrew will get into in the next slide. Next slide. Oh, Andrew, you're on mute again.
So just quickly, Housing Works provides a full range of supportive housing, and it's the foundation of our integrated care approach to ending the HIV epidemic. And integrated care is the single most predictive variable for improved health outcomes for HIV positive patients. Evidence of that is that 80% of the clients in our supportive housing programs are virally suppressed or undetectable, meaning they are no longer able to transmit the virus. The citywide average for HIV patients is 74%, so we exceed that. Supportive housing residents at the Lirio will have access to on-site case management and specialty programming, as well as convenient access to an HIV-specific primary and behavioral health care center and Hell's Kitchen on West 48th Street. They'll also have access to the full suite of services that Housing Works offers, including health home care management, job training, peer training, and AIDS adult day healthcare, which will all be provided offsite in the community as part of our network of Housing Works.
Thank you. Next slide. Okay, here's our proposed affordability distribution. So you can see here that the formerly homeless units will be mostly studios, while the affordable units, which will range from 40 to 80% of the AMI, will be mostly 2 and 3 bedroom units. Next slide. And here are the range of household incomes and monthly rents according to 2021 AMI. So just as an example, the Lirio could be home to a family of 4, making a combined income of $95,000 a year and paying just under $2,000 a month on rent within the 80% AMI tier. Next slide. I'll turn it over to the MTA for this one.
Good evening. The Lirio will include 30,000 square feet of office space for the MTA that will house Rail Control Center employees who are being relocated from the adjacent existing building to make way for expanded mission-critical control technologies within the existing building. The relocated employees will continue to work between the 2 buildings. The proposed Lirio will also contain 15 below-grade parking spaces for Rail Control Center emergency response vehicles. And I should emphasize that these vehicles do not employ sirens They're mostly SUV sized and they're used to respond to issues within the rail system.
Thanks, Vincent. Next slide. Continuing with the building program, we are proposing approximately 7,100 square feet of ground floor and 2,800 square feet of cellar retail. Our original plan for this was to have a Housing Works store take part of the available retail space. However, we have also heard that there is a strong desire for a grocery store at this location. So we have engaged StreetSense, a retail marketing consultant, to help us think through how potential grocery stores would view our retail space based on size, distance to other grocery stores, et cetera. And we've also engaged a retail broker, Ripco, very early on in the process to actually put boots on the ground and start discussions with potential grocery tenants. So we will continue to keep the community updated on this as we progress through Uler. And finally, just to highlight again our key environmental features, we are going to be targeting passive house construction for the Lirio, in addition to having green roofs and rooftop solar. Next slide. This is our rendering. The building is masonry with punched windows. The windows are of a residential scale. We believe that these brick colors complement other brick found in the neighborhood. Retail is along the 9th Avenue commercial corridor, and the residential entrance is punctuated by a 2-story glass entrance on 54th Street. And the MTA garage and office entrance are further along 54th Street, closest to the existing MTA facilities. Next slide. Here's our other rendering, just highlighting our solar panels and green roof. Next slide. So we've met with a number of community groups and elected officials over the last 2 years. In addition to meeting the former and new borough presidents and city council land use, we've also given tours of Bailey Holt House, a supportive housing building owned and managed by Housing Works, to the 55th and 45th Street Block Associations. And we've also met with the 47th Street Block Association. And again, we hope to maintain transparency throughout the Uler process and to continue to meet with neighborhood groups. We actually just launched a website, thelirio.ny.com, which has all of the information that we just presented and allows people to register for project updates. Next slide. And here's our anticipated Uler timeline. We are presenting today to you, Community Board for a Land Use Committee. We hope to present to the full board in February, followed by the Manhattan Borough President early this spring, then followed by City Planning Commission, followed by City Council at some point this spring, putting Uler approval this summer. Next slide. All right, that's all we've got for you right now. We are happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I will preside right now. I want to thank you for that, Sarah, and thank you, Andrew and Felipe and the MTA. I just want to ask Sarah one question. Help us out here. Since our your presentation in October, could you tell us what has changed specifically? Because as you know, as I said earlier, the community board by a vote, I think it was 44-0, rejected approval of what you presented in October. So could you tell us what has changed from your presentation in October to your presentation today? I think that would help.
Thanks, JD. What has changed are the rezoning boundaries. We've limited them, as we heard that there was some concern over that. So the rezoning area has shrunken. That is the only change since the September 30th meeting.
That is the only change. Okay, and secondly, you used the term very unlikely that it would affect other areas, these changes. What do you base the term very unlikely on?
So I think I used that in describing the special permit and text amendment. And the reason that I use those terms are because we as I mentioned, we carefully crafted that with DCP to narrow the applicability of the special permit. So just to reiterate what those, how we narrowed the findings, in order for a site to use this special permit, it needs to have an area of 40,000 square feet. It needs to have wide street frontage, and it needs to contain existing public infrastructure. And there also need to be demonstrated physical conditions that create practical difficulties. And we have confirmed with DCP that there are no other privately owned sites within the Special Clinton Preservation Area that fit that description. So that's what I mean by describing it as unlikely that others would use that special permit.
Sarah, thank you. And as you know, the AMIs are a concern, as the agreement was 100% moderate middle, and now it's majority, I don't know, 80% low income. So you can understand that there might be some questions raised about that. And frankly, I'm flabbergasted that there has been no movement since our October meeting. So I know there are going to be a lot of questions. I'm going to take them from the committee and certainly the community. I think a lot of people have signed up to speak. So thank you for the presentation. I'm going to start. Paul Devlin. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, JD. I will echo the sentiment of being flabbergasted. I don't see any need to continue this meeting whatsoever because HPD, Housing Works, and the development team clearly do not listen to this community. There is no change based on the presentation of the past. We can just send the same letter we sent in October because the issues remain the same, unaddressed and unattended to. It's an embarrassment that we have to sit through another presentation like this on a topic that the community is outraged about, and HPD and the development team do nothing about it. And I'm just, I guess it doesn't even begin to express my sentiment. But more specifically, if we do need to be on record, we need to fix these income bands. We need to address the rezoning issue. And we have come up with solutions that the rezoning is unnecessary. There are solutions to put that MTA space somewhere else. We don't need to have commercial space in the Lirio building, which is forcing the rezoning to commercial. But the one question I do have, though, trying to get my focus here, we just talked about the rezoning, and it's very unlikely to impact any other parts of the special district within Hell's Kitchen. Have there been any consideration of other special districts within this community district? So portions of Chelsea. Have there been any consideration of the impact of this rezoning and the precedent it's setting on any place in Community District 5 and the Upper West Side? This rezoning is going to be a city rezoning, and the precedent that's being established will have a negative impact on special districts outside of Hell's Kitchen. And to say it's very unlikely that there is another parcel within the special districts of Hell's Kitchen, it's very unlikely something will happen. The precedent will be established for the city, and that could impact other parts of this community district and our neighboring community districts. So I'd like to ask Sarah if you have done any analysis of any available private lots in any other special districts within this community district 4 or any other community districts neighboring us.
We looked at the impact of this rezoning on the area, on the rezoning area, but I would have to.
Sarah, I think we can jump in on this. Let me see, Paul, we appreciate your comment and your question. And HPD and DCP, we took a look at the rezoning, and just to highlight again, the boundaries of the rezoning were like step back a little bit, right? As Sarah presented. What I would like to highlight with the rezoning is that the analysis that we did is we identified that the site is unique in its shared zoning lot conditions with the MTA building, right, on the mid block. The status also has a status of a major housing development site on city-owned land that is subject to the POA, as you all know. The proposed rezoning and the actions are tailored to address unique and particular issues and site conditions identified for this site. This would not be seen as a precedent to other zoning changes in the Special Clinton district. We don't anticipate also that will affect any other areas, as you mentioned. because no other sites in the Clinton Special District share these conditions and specific considerations. With these elements in mind, we think that, will not be setting a precedent with this rezoning. I hope that gives you a little bit of peace. But when we studied the possibility of this rezoning, we took these elements in consideration.
Well, thank you, Philip. I have to say, we don't anticipate that. That is not reassuring. That is not reassuring. That is not a reassuring phrase for this community. Paul, thank you for that. I'm going to go right in order. I think Chris LeBron had a question.
I actually yield to Joe. I saw his hand up.
Okay, Joe, any comments?
Well, yeah, I have a few questions first. I have never seen a Uler. I went through this application today for the first time because we received it on the 10th. We've never gotten a Uler in our entire board's history without a full set of plans. Felipe, is there some sort of error here that we don't have a full set of plans for this building?
The application follows the DCP standards for this kind of applications. So we submitted, the team and HPD submitted what was requested as part of the application materials.
Okay, so then I'm asking the developer to submit
I can answer that.
Full set of plans, please. I don't want to hear about regulations. We have an inclusionary housing application. We get a full set of plans.
The developer wants to answer, John.
That is not, Andy's not from the developer.
But I can answer as to DCP's policy and why you might have not seen a set of drawings. So this application was filed several weeks ago, and there have been several iterations of review necessitating some minor changes to the drawings. The set that you saw on the 10th was not the final set of drawings. The final set of drawings were sent out with the notice of certification earlier today. And those are the final full set of drawings.
Floor by floor set of plans, is that correct?
This type of, sorry.
I want to say.
This type.
Andy, I understand fully what the procedure is. I would like somebody in the city government to acknowledge, let me put it to Samara, because that's why she's here, that this community board expects to get a full set of building plans for this proposed building on every floor. The Hudson companies, to Aaron and to Sarah, can you please deliver that to our board electronically this week? It feels as if, and I know it's not the case, that you're trying to conceal what the building is about. Can I just get that initial commitment from Hudson?
We certainly do not want to conceal what's going on in the building. I believe we can share floor plans with you.
Not believe. I'm asking you to commit that you will share full floor plans.
We will share floor plans with you this week.
Okay, so that's
just to clarify. Just to clarify in that note, I believe if sharing any documents, any floor plans, we will need to consult with the MTA. It is our understanding that if we share anything, that will need to go above the floors involving the MTA.
You can blank out the MTA
Monsoon, could you provide specifics on what some
you can blank out
measurements,
like
security.
Yeah, Joe just said. No, Joe just said we can blank out what's going on in the MTA space.
We're not interested in compromising your security. Okay. We want basic information. Okay.
Yeah.
So all I want to say to HPD and city planning, irrespective of what your process is, how foolish is it, given the controversy and the lack of transparency in the last 2 years about this project, that you would not send a full set of plans? Just let it lay where it is. So I have some specific questions. First of all, you've heard from JD about the AMI bans and from Paul. To the developer, the next time you come to us, come with something that begins to move in a direction. It is absolutely embarrassing that we're sitting here not having this discussion. If you believe that this will finally be negotiated in the 11th hour of a city council committee, let's be adults and try to begin to work together to come to some sort of rational compromise. I just put it out there with that and I say nothing else about it. I want to go to the application. The application that was submitted is contradictory. There are certain pages that say, here's the rezoning area, here's not the rezoning area. It lists a whole bunch of things we comply or don't comply. Can I ask the developer to clean up the submitted application to make sure that the components that we received actually tie in one component to the other? And I've only done a cursory review so far, but I was surprised to see that given how long we've been working at it. Then I have a very specific question about the extent of the rezoning. Also to Sarah, I'm sorry, Hudson Companies has already informed me in multiple conversations and briefings the board had that you, Hudson, did not propose the extent of this rezoning to cover the entire MTA building. So I cannot accept that you make a public pronouncement, we, which is not what's happened. This came from DCP and from in consultation with HPD. So that's not the case, and it is not your initiative. So therefore, our board will be working with DCP and HPD to work on reducing the extent of this rezoning. May I ask a question to you, Sarah? There is parking here, correct? How is that parking being built? In your own application under 96-111 for compliance, you say there is no parking. And in the preservation area, there can be no parking for accessory or residential parking. How is it being built? It is not noted in the application.
Yes. I have Judy Gallon on, who is going to explain this so much better than me. It's primary to the use of the MTA space, and that is the distinction. But Judy, we have a ZRD1 related to this, which we are happy to share. But Judy, if you want to further clarify that, that would be great.
So Judy, before you go, the fact that you have a ZRD1 and you haven't shared it as part of this package is another transparency issue. Judy, please try to give us some explication on this.
Yeah, it's not accessory parking, which you're right, absolutely is not allowed. It's actually part of the use. It's not parking for employees or visitors. It's actually part of the emergency response use itself. It is part of the use.
And that's a different zoning term?
And that is the ZRD1. Excuse me?
No, that's the ZRD1 is what you're getting your consideration for, right?
A ZRD1 is a zoning resolution determination from the Department of Buildings that agreed that this type of vehicle location, I hesitate to call it parking because everybody thinks of accessory and it's not that at all, is part of the use itself. It's not accessory parking, which is the type of parking that is not allowed.
So for the public, we have worked very hard over the past 25 years not to have any parking in the preservation area. And now this developer and HPD with an MTA have gone and sought a determination in advance to say this would not actually be parking, when physically it's a dog, it walks like a dog, and it's parking. Okay, that's what it is. So I was very surprised when it said in your application complies. Now I understand, again, another way around this is getting a determination in advance saying it is not parking, but it's part of the use. That again
so
should
it's
have
like
been
a
brought to us.
firehouse. It's like a firehouse where there's a fire truck stored inside of a firehouse that is used in an emergency situation. Yes, the fire truck is stored, you could say it's parking, but that's not the way it's looked at in the zoning resolution. It's actually part of a firehouse. And this is it's exactly the same. It's an emergency response vehicle.
Where are those vehicles kept today? To Monson?
Monson can tell us.
I believe that many of them are parked on the existing lot along with the employee parking.
So therefore, they're basically as parking today on a lot, not in compliance with zoning.
I couldn't respond to that part.
Well, there was no ZRD1.
MTA isn't subject. MTA is not subject to zoning. It has an exemption, and I think. I guess that's really all I need to say on the subject.
I understand. I think we understand MTA is not subject to zoning, but that's not the case because there's multiple zoning changes being made to meet the MTA. I have a question from Monson. Did you request the rezoning of the?
If I could explain that, Joe, could I explain why that is? MTA is not subject.
They're a state agency, we know. But however, like
right,
the Port
but
Authority,
when a private developer like Hudson goes and files an application for a building permit, since they aren't the MTA, they cannot cloak themselves in the MTA's exemption, even though MTA is on the zoning lot and is occupying lawfully under state law. But when it gets mixed in on a zoning lot with a private developer, the private developer can't claim that exemption. So they basically have to legalize the MTA use. And that's exactly where all these problems have come from.
You are seeking to clean it up, correct? So Munson, did you request a rezoning of the entire New York City Transit Control Center from the MTA?
Well, I did not personally. I mean, we've been in this agreement with the city to release the parking lot for this affordable housing development, which would also provide the 30,000 square feet of office space and the park and the spaces for the emergency response vehicles.
But I asked my question again, not you personally. Did the MTA request that the entire control center be rezoned from residential use to commercial?
Oh, well, the MTA is not the lead applicant.
Okay, so I'll ask one more time. Did the MTA in its discussions with DCP and HPD request that the MTA control center be rezoned from residential to commercial?
The MTA is not making any specific requests about the rezoning or the land use application.
Okay, so you're silent on it, basically.
Yes.
Okay, so then I will put this to the public and to put it to the committee members. The request did not come from the developer. It came from DCP and it came from HPD working together. We have said at our last meeting with that vote of 44-0, we reject the rezoning from residential to commercial. And the idea that it has no impact is naive at best, but blind at worst. This is in the heart of our special zoning district, which is a residential district. This area was actually rezoned in your own documents from 1973 that you put in your Uler from commercial to residential. We reject it. We ask you to work with us and to make the project come to a reasonable solution. That is a very, very, very important thing. The next item, I'm going to go back to MTA for a second, JD. I want to congratulate you today on the news of the $6 billion grant from the Federal Transportation Administration, the largest grant ever secured through the American Rescue Act. It's fantastic. We need you, MTA, to be a partner in this and to reduce or eliminate your square footage. We have already written to the MTA about this. We need you to work with us, to get this project to work for an affordable housing project and to not be a zoning nightmare and disaster. We need your square footage reduced or eliminated. We know you will say no. We are working with the state very directly on this. And given the fact that you've gotten $6 billion and you sold the Western rail yards, the 30,000 square feet at this juncture really seems to be gratuitous.
Well, as I noted in the slide that I presented, we need the space because the existing building is being reprogrammed to provide for additional space for other mission critical uses.
For new technology, which makes the trains run better, right?
Yes, without going into all the details because of the high security uses within the rail control center. And it's displacing RCC employees and they will need to go back and forth. They are directly serving the existing functions within the building. So they need to be directly adjacent. In fact, we're working on the design to have an existing connection between the two buildings. It's a mission critical. It is to run the subway system. It's the nerve center of the whole system.
I will say again, but you as the agency, given your resources, you have recently sold your headquarters on Madison Avenue. You could build additional square footage on top of the current center. It is more difficult. There is no question. And you may shake your head, but you are presented this community with a serious problem that creates huge precedents well beyond the MTA needs.
Joe, I can tell you, I've been inside the existing building. You do not want to mess with the functions of the existing building to start building on top of it. It wasn't designed for that. And you need to run the subway system just to put it's not a feasible option.
It could be relocated somewhere else in our neighborhood also. I mean, what I'm saying here is that this affordable housing project suffers from an incredible amount of freight, a rezoning that was not requested, income bans that have not been met, and an MTA requirement that basically gets rid of commercial space and has created an horrific controversy in our district.
It's
We ask
to
everyone to
support the entire subway system. It is the nerve center.
Okay, I'm not going to say that our community doesn't support the entire subway system. Of course we do. But you also benefited dramatically by the sale of the Eastern and Western rail yards. And we have a huge monster development there called Hudson Yards. So let's just remember, we all work together, and it is not just one item. Everything works in context one with the other. My very last
Joe, I want to continue on. So
I'm sorry. Yeah.
we can come back to you, but
no problem, JD. I got it.
Okay, and we can come back, Joe, if you have other questions. I'm going to go to Brian Weber.
Well, I yielded, JD, but I did not refrain from asking questions. May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't see your hand up.
Oh, no, I had my hand up. I yielded to Joe so that way he can ask his series, but I didn't.
Of course. Go ahead, Chris, if you don't mind waiting, Brian. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, JD. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for your presentations. You know, I actually had, this was more of a institutional question. When was the last time we voted for approval on a development project without understanding the full scope of the construction project? That's just, and I want to talk about the environmental aspects. I don't want to talk about the AMI. I don't want to talk directly about the MCA, though I do want to address the parking lot, the environmental feasibility of it all, the statewide mission and the citywide mission to decongest for cars, the current project, the current parking that exists on 54th Street. But most importantly, when was the last time this committee voted in favor of something that we didn't understand the lead specifications of, that we didn't understand what the residents were being provided?
That would be never.
Thank you.
Never.
Thank you. I'm once again, I need to preface this as I did in September. I really do think about my Uncle Murphy during this time, who in 1994 died of HIV and AIDS. And I think about the work that I was privileged to do with Dr. Bellman as one of my first high school job. He treated individuals with HIV and AIDS, and many of whom I became good friends with, and some are still alive to this day. I want to make sure that in our negotiations and trying to find income bands and trying to find the appropriate services for these men and women who are long survivors, and for families who are looking for affordable housing in Midtown, that we know exactly what is being provided in terms of kitchen, bathroom, general materials, what's the full scope of the social services, because as a 37-year-old man growing up in Hell's Kitchen, living with people and with HIV and AIDS is a normal experience, right? So there's nothing of a faux pas there. It's encouraged. I want to know what is going into these apartments so that way we can ensure the residents, all residents, are being treated with equity, and that the building that they live in truly does meet an environmental standard that not just the 21st century demands of, not just 2022, but the 22nd century, if that building is to survive and is so mission critical for our subway system. That's all.
Thank you, Chris. I guess we'd have to see some plans to be able to answer all that, which we have not seen.
We can actually describe what's in the units if you want an answer, and I can speak to the services that Housing Works will provide, or we cannot.
We
I'll
need to
leave
see
that
it
up
in
to you.
writing, put it together, and then so we can discuss it. It is very everything general right now.
Joe, we're being directly asked the question. You don't want us to answer it?
No, Andrew, I'm stating that in every project that we've dealt with on our board, there is a specific set of services provided in advance so we can have an intelligent conversation. When we talk about apartment finishes and apartments, the developer presents a whole set of things so we know what it is. It's not that we don't want to hear from you. We want to hear about and discuss it fully. That's our goal. So if you can get that to us, like the plans, that would be helpful. So in our next meeting, we can really engage with this and ask you very specifically about the whole service piece.
Okay, thank you,
Andrew.
Joe. Thank you,
Andrew, I
Chris.
appreciate your candor and your offer for that, but generally speaking, this committee does see everything in totality. But I do appreciate from my heart that you do have that information. I think it just would help the committee and the community if it all comes together as one, so we can approach it holistically and with heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Brian Weber, you've been very patient. Brian, welcome.
Hi, thank you, JD. Not at all. There's, I really want to echo a lot of what has been said by yourself and Paul. Joe spoke to many of the issues that were way above my head regarding the zoning, but I really have to come back to the issue of what was promised, what was agreed to with AMI bans, and I suspect that's what a lot of the public is here to comment on, which is the complete absence of moderate to middle income affordable housing. And that was originally the main issue that everyone thought we'd be talking about. And now we have this other layer of somewhat abstract zoning issues that kind of goes above our heads and obscures the issue. And so I really am distressed while the presenters made an effort to address our comments insufficiently, as pointed out by Joe regarding zoning. They've done nothing to address the issue of moderate to middle income housing and what was agreed to. And that's, to me, where this whole conversation goes to, where this community works very hard and the public comes and we encourage the public to come. And it's just as if we are not being listened to. So I think, I would really like to hear from the public on this matter and encourage as many of them to speak about their feelings about what's returned here. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Leslie, turning to the public, although Leslie is a member of this board and she's also lives up on 55th Street. Leslie Murphy, welcome.
Thank you, JD, and the rest of the committee. So full disclosure, I wasn't going to come tonight because I believe it's an exercise in futility. And unfortunately, I think from what we've seen tonight, I am correct. I've been on the community board for a few years now and involved with neighborhood groups for many years previous. And I do believe in process, as our board chair, Jeffrey LaFrancois, always says. And there have been many policies and programs the community board, and by extension, the public have weighed in on, researched, and to a great extent contributed to produce better results. And I think this is because of the constructive dialogue and trust we have between us and city agencies and elected officials. So I think we can all acknowledge after seeing the presentation that this project is a glaring and sad exception to that up to this point. But moving forward on this MTA site, it must be acknowledged and understood by HPD that the majority of these units will be filled by medium income families, which was carefully crafted, negotiated, promised, and agreed upon. Working class families, so with 2 or more children, can no longer afford to live in our area. And I can't stress this enough, without making huge life-altering sacrifices. And even then, the families grow out to a point where they're pretty much financially forced to move out. And I'm not telling you this as a point for the sake of this argument. This is happening on the ground. And I've been going to many going away gatherings because of this. And it's causing a huge crater in our local economics and educational systems. And the choices you are making to change these income bands from family to individual, from the higher to the lower, is made with vacuum logic, not considering the health and vitality of a neighborhood. And I'm going to bring in one more component here. I'm on the education committee for this community board. We work so hard trying to bring balance and resources to our schools. So hard. But I do not want to hear anyone complain that our schools aren't integrated without knowing what HPD is doing. In fact, the next education meeting we have on it, I'm going to extend an invitation to HPD to explain the thought process behind pulling these affordable family units off the books, because it makes a huge difference when we deal with our schools. So the fact that there seems to be no understanding of this balance of urban economics, I guess you would say, is disturbing, and it doesn't make me confident with city decision-making in this case. So I guess I would just have one ask after all that. And it would be that, please, as we are under this clock, if you can look through this at this project through a wider lens, because right now you might be able to tick a few boxes off with this short-sighted solution, but the greater fight against economic disparities includes a commitment to working class families and a balanced neighborhood, which we expect to be mostly included in the MTA Site project. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And I just want to have, if I may ask JD, one question from the MTA presentation group, just one.
Sure.
With a show of hands, just with a show of hands, how many of you have middle school or high school kids that are in the New York public school system right now? One? Thank you. One.
Two.
Two. Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Felipe as well. Thank you, Leslie. Janine, I would really like to go to the community along with Leslie to weigh in on this. I don't know if Christine Gorman from West 55th Street is here.
She is. So we have Christine and then John Smallwood.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Christine.
She's muted. Other shows.
Here we are.
There you are. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to speak. I had so many thoughts and emotions going through my mind as I listened to the presentation. I have to echo what has already been said. I was completely floored at how little change there was from back in the fall, you know. So that's been done to death, but I just want to reiterate that. We've been negotiating about getting more affordable housing for working and middle-class folks in this neighborhood longer than some of you at the MTA have been alive, I think. And we had a community that came together, hashed everything out. We wanted a park. I'm with West 55th Street Block Association. We wanted a park at that site. Not at all different from what is now available, apparently will be available at the DEP site. No, we were told, forget the park because we need the affordable housing. And so reluctantly, I and others said, okay, we need the affordable housing, no park. Yes, it's absolutely true. We need the affordable housing. You will say that was 20 years ago. Well, guess what? In tomorrow's New York Times, there is an article about people being priced out of rents. They can't buy, they have to rent, they're being priced out of their neighborhoods. And, you know, this is something that's going to have implications all across the city, especially as with this pandemic. Yes, another pandemic. Yes, I was there in the beginning of the AIDS pandemic, taking care of people with HIV. We have another pandemic. We are not going to have people, we're going to throw people out of apartments because the rent eviction moratorium is going to collapse. We came up with a plan. And the lip service that you are giving to community input is outrageous. I saw on one of your slides, oh yes, you gave a tour to the West 55th Street Block Association. Yes, I went and you didn't listen to a single thing I said. You have broken our trust. We trust CB4. We have worked with CB4. We worked with CB4 as a community to come up with the original plan. I note that Christine Quinn was then our city council person. Maybe because she's a woman, we can ignore what she said and how she worked to get us what we needed. This is ridiculous, and I probably should stop there. But I think you are picking and choosing what you want to agree with from the Western Rail Yards agreement that was in writing. We paid for this affordable housing by allowing Related to build luxury buildings at Hudson Yards. You are stealing the affordable housing from us that we paid for as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. You can have another 5 minutes.
I don't need any more. I think I need to, oh, and about that, were you even here at the beginning of the meeting when we learned about 3 people who are apparently demolishing their buildings through neglect? And there's even a name for it. It's called demolition by neglect. We've had 20 cases of that where people find loopholes in order to demolish buildings in the special district. Do you really think that no one is going to take advantage of rezoning permits, whether in Hell's Kitchen or the Upper West Side or Chelsea? And believe you me, if Chelsea and the Upper West Side get wind of this, you're going to be stuck with so many lawsuits from the really rich people up there and down there that you won't know what to do with. Can you tell I'm angry? I have tried really, really hard to be accommodating. And I feel like I've been made a fool of in every single time that I have tried. I have come, I have taken the tours, and nothing changes. I fully support CB4. They are a great community board. You know, you have to take the community. You can't just pick and choose when you want the community or what the community's needs are. You know, you're going to have a community space. We don't even get a park. The park will be on the roof, so the community can't even have the park. I mean, come on. Anyway, that's enough.
Thank you, Christine. I have to point out, Christine is, as long as I've known her, is mild-mannered.
That's true.
And
People
so
are-
she is channeling not only her block association, but many other residents and business owners in Hell's Kitchen. Thank you, Christine.
And you could fix this by having, I don't know, working and middle class folks have HIV too. So you could do it that way. I mean, there are other ways that in which you could, I'm getting.
I think, and they can continue to work with the board to try to.
Please, 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 this is a good board, and they know how to balance everything from low and supportive housing all the way up to moderate and working class housing. So,
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Christine. Mr. Smallwood, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is John Smallwood. I live across the street from this site. And what I wanted to do is actually talk a little bit really about, not about the AMIs, but really about what Chris and Joe brought up, which is this project has been out there for over 3 years, and none of our neighbors, residents, property owners, business owners, no one from HPD, no one from the developer, no one from MTA has ever said, talk to any of the neighbors about any of the site issues or what's going on in the neighborhood. And I was hoping that we were going to have a more robust presentation today. I was hoping we would see plans. I was hoping we'd see more than a rendering, which the rendering was all marked up, so it wasn't even clear, what was actually occurring. It looks, and actually, I think even in the presentation, it was head off. It was a 9-story building, but yet, if you look at most of the building's 8 stories, so it's a little confusing what's actually being built here. And as we've seen, and just so you know, I'm in real estate development myself, but there was a gentleman who spoke earlier about the developer who had the demolition property, and he said an interesting thing. He said the developer sat on my stoop and talked to me. And then Crystal Hudson, she's a new city council member. She said this morning, she turned down a project in her district because she said, it seems like all these projects that are being done behind the scenes without even the resident input. It's all done before, with CPC. So I would just ask that somehow that the developer team be more open with what the proposals are in terms of what the plans are going to be. I think, we haven't heard what's going to happen with the parking lot, what's going to happen with the 100 users of that lot. Where are they going to be parking? We learned some new things today. We learned that the buildings on West 53rd are not even in the project anymore. As part of the rezoning, we learned today that there were some other things that came up I can't even cover. There were so many new things brought up today. So I just asked that there be more communication and that the development team, please, if you could share your plans with us, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smallwood. Thank you, John. Janine, other speakers from the community?
Yes, we have Katie Savage and then Kendra Stevenson.
Okay, welcome, Katie.
Hi, so I wrote this down so I wouldn't lose anything. Hi, my name is Katie Savage, and I have been a resident of Hell's Kitchen for 17 years. First at 36th and 9th, and now at 51st and 10th. For the majority of this time, I have been rent poor. Even making good money in the fashion industry, it took years for one paycheck to cover my monthly rent in a small walk-up building. When it finally did, the building owners kicked everyone out and gut renovated the building to my 1-bedroom apartment became a 2-bedroom apartment for $3,700 because of Hudson Yards. They seized the opportunity of Hudson Yards being built to kick us all out literally with 30 days notice between Christmas and New Year's. And, that's insane. So once again, I found myself having to accept being rent poor if I wanted to stay in the neighborhood that I loved near my job. Everybody should be allowed to live and work in the same neighborhood. I understand that there is a need for low-income affordable housing, but this agreement specifically stated that these sites would be 100% middle-income affordable housing for residents such as myself. This is really a matter of principle. The community made concessions to allow Hudson Yards to be built, knowing we would get much-needed middle-income housing, yet seemingly that agreement has been thrown out. The situation has only gotten worse over the years since the agreement was made, and rents continue to increase at a ridiculous pace, forcing many residents to leave. It's unacceptable that the city refuses to address the fact that they are not holding up their end of the agreement. That's really the crux of it. This was decided that these were going to be middle income, and that was the understanding. And now it's like, oh, wait, no, we changed our mind. You can't do that. How does the city get away with doing that when there are so many people like myself and a lot of young people who can barely survive? I have to decide between paying for health insurance, paying for rent, paying for food. How do we make it work? We should be able to have a space here as well. And that's what these buildings were set aside for. This has nothing to do with not wanting low-income housing. We need that too. But these specific buildings were meant to be middle income, and you are not doing that. And that's not okay. The government can't just decide to renege on their agreement, or else society is just going to collapse. And, that's why people like myself choose not to have kids. What future do we have? I don't understand, why do I still live here? I'm going to be priced out sooner or later when my next rent increase comes in, and my income is not where it was because of COVID screwing up the job market. So we need this more than ever to keep middle income young professionals and families in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I'd also point out, low income was built in the Western Rail Yards. That was also part of the deal to give us some middle and moderate. There was a lot of low income that we agreed to in the Hudson Yards. So that's very important. I'd also point out, not only did they change the rules, they never told us about it. They never discussed the change with us before it was made. Thank you, Katie. Janine, who's next?
Yes, next is Kendra Stensvin. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
No, that's right. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Just pulling up my notes too. I had set aside. Oh, here we go. Hi, I'm Kendra Stensvin. I'm a 16-year resident of 54th and 55th Streets. Not both at the same time, but I've lived on the same block as the MTA site for a number of years. And I feel like a lot of the criticism here relates to what was promised many years ago versus what the HPD RFP said 3 years ago. So I'm not here to criticize how that happened. I'm here to just, if that was true and okay to proceed with, I'm here to just talk about the building as it is designed and proposed today. Because I am an advocate for affordable housing and green building. I have always wondered why we had a surface parking lot in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. And I've been witness to callous entries and exits of the parking lot users that affect both the bikes and the pedestrians on that streetscape. So just responding to as it's proposed today, putting the history aside, I just want to say I support the proposal because it removes most of the parking on the site. It's only going to be for the emergency vehicles going forward. It's sustainably designed. It activates the streetscape, which has been pretty dead forever. And also it adds to the supply of both supportive and affordable family housing, for which there is endless demand, despite the original intent of the moderate income that I've learned about since then. In response to a couple of the items I saw in the presentation, I saw the rezoning is looking to eliminate the setbacks at the ground level. I have to say that I live in a building with those setbacks, and all it's done is create like large concrete pads with wind eddies of trash. So bringing the street up to the front of the lot line would eliminate all that trash tunnels. And then lastly, I lived across the street from the door at the MTA parking, or the MTA building as is today. And it has the emergency vehicle garage doors. And I don't think I've ever seen anything go in and out of them. There was never a noise. It's quiet. So when we're talking about parking here, I can attest to the fact that these emergency vehicles never were a nuisance on our block, to my knowledge, having lived there on that block for 12 years. So that's the end of my my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Janine?
Up next is Richard and Catherine.
Richard, welcome. Richard, are you with us?
I am. You know, it takes a second for the mute to go off. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We there? Okay. JD, I have to disagree. I think we've got some villains here. This entire process was hijacked by Corey Johnson and taken away from us by the folks who we thought were representing us. And they changed this from a middle income, moderate income project to something that fit their own political needs at the moment. And so there are villains. And this neighborhood is being steamrolled. Clearly, they have no interest in hearing anything we believe about what should be done here. This is a neighborhood that's more than capable of working together and coming up with a plan that addresses all of the various constituencies we have. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that, as I said, we're being completely steamrolled. And my suggestion is that the board vote to decertify this Uler and to terminate this RFP that was born of treachery, and to create something that is more in line with what this neighborhood believes is appropriate and holds dear. And I just want to mention that when you have your elected representatives sell you out like this, you can't trust them. And we have so much great work to do. And yet, who are we going to work with if we can't trust them? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Good point. I believe, Catherine, you're next? Or Kathleen?
Yeah, Cat Lafferty. And then after,
Got to move her over.
I'm trying to, but she's not accepting. I allowed her to speak though. There you go.
Welcome. Are you there?
Oh, hi, JD. Actually, I didn't mean to speak on this issue, so you can skip me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Janine, next.
Next up is M. Hirschfield and Barbara next.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Any luck? If not, we can go to Barbara.
Sorry, JD, here I am.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi, I spoke at the October meeting. I live in an HDFC on West 53rd Street between 8th and 9th. I want to say I applaud the community board for its rejection letter. I thank you for that. I agree with Christina's outrage, the lady from West 55th Street. I second her outrage. She has every right to be outraged. I think it's really sad that, you know, agreements are reached and the community board wants to live up to it and HPD goes off and changes it. There should be, we should have more faith in our government. And I just want to clarify two little points to questions that were raised. The gentleman earlier mentioned it. The carve out, the change to the zoning that HPD referred to is the 6 small buildings on the north side of 53rd Street, going east from 9th Avenue, starting with the building that houses Alfie's, 6 small walk-up buildings. So that's the only change to the zoning there. And in terms of the parking, I don't know how much parking they put their emergency vehicles in on the lot, but during the day, those emergency crew vans are quite often illegally parked on 53rd Street on a regular basis. So just those 2 small points of information, but I fully support the community board in trying to keep the original agreement in place. And I thank you for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker.
Barbara.
Barbara Connect. My name is Barbara Connect.
Welcome.
I'm also going to speak to the original agreement. I've lived on 55th Street and 9th Avenue since 1988, and this situation caused me to reflect on my own experience. When I moved to Hell's Kitchen in 1988, I was working for the City of New York in the Homeless Services Agency. 35 years later, I can say it was still the early years of quote unquote modern homelessness. I was working on a multi-agency initiative to site and build 20 new buildings to provide transitional housing for families and permanent SRO housing for adults exiting homelessness. The city made an initial proposal for 5 sites in each borough. Over the next year or so, we engaged in negotiations with neighborhoods, borough presidents, community boards, community groups on locations, size, distribution, and so on. The agency staff was negotiating in good faith to build relationships and trust and address local differences across the city. Unbeknownst to us, the mayor's office was engaged in its own process, which in the end amounted to individual deals that reneged on all the agreements we were making. Over the rest of my time in city government, which lasted into the following mayoral administration, I experienced over and over again the repercussions, namely a significant loss of trust in city government. It stymied our efforts repeatedly. There is no argument over the lack of housing for all but the wealthiest in New York, and there are many aspects of this project that I would support at another location. But that is not the case. The issue at stake for the MTA site is credibility and trust. The previous administration broke an agreement, destroyed its credibility, and annihilated trust. This administration has the opportunity and the imperative to honor the original agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much, Barbara. Well said. Janine, other speakers?
Yeah, next up is Becca, and I believe it's Anita McDonough.
Great.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I wanted to share on behalf of both projects that I actually wanted to share my excitement. I'm really excited that there is more affordable housing coming to the community. I have lived in the community board for 7 years. I used to live in the Actors Fund building, the Dorothy Ross Friedman residence, and now I have a different unit, my own single unit in a different affordable housing building. And I wanted to share how excited I am about both projects, and especially the indie space, rehearsal space. I am an actor and I'm an artist in the community, and I wanted to share how grateful I am for all of these new projects that are being built, and how grateful I am to the Actors Fund that they have really helped me. I was rejected 9 times from these projects, and because I'm a freelancer, I have different jobs, and I was really grateful for the Actors Fund help to help me get my income together in order to qualify for this building. And I'm so grateful, especially in a pandemic when I've lost my jobs. I'm so grateful to have affordable housing and to be able to survive in the city and to stay here, as many of my friends are artists that have moved out of the city. And I wanted to also say I really appreciate the diversity in all of the income brackets, especially the low income one. I am in one of the lowest income brackets. I'm an artist, I'm college educated, and I have multiple jobs as a freelancer. And I'm so grateful to have the low income housing, and I'm just trying to survive as an artist and share culture with the community. And I have a lot of friends that are in my same income bracket that are artists that are struggling and would greatly benefit from that low income bracket and would really help bring the arts back to the community. And I just wanted to share that and emphasize how important that was, and how having affordable housing has changed my life and has made me able to stay in this neighborhood and in the city and survive as an artist.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you very much. Anita, are you with us?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I'm here. Happy New Year to all. We've had some amazing speakers tonight, and I'm very proud of everything that was said, and I echo everything that they've expressed. I just want to start out by asking HPD a question. Do you have an agreement with City Bike? Hello?
Does HPD have an agreement with City Bike?
Yeah,
No.
because there's a rendering of City Bike in front of the building. So
it's an existing City Bike port.
No, there's a City Bike there right now. Christine, is there a City Bike on 54th?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
There is. So it will stay there. Okay, my apologies. What bothers me about the, as Joe brought up, we don't have any floor plans. I have no idea how big these studios are, but there are many studios. And to me, it just seems as if it's more of a money grab by putting in more little studios where you're going to get more money per person as opposed to accommodating families. And that bothers me very much. I do believe that we need the middle income housing. I too, as Barbara, have lived in this neighborhood since the 80s, since 1986. And I don't like the way this is going. I don't think it's right that a community where I participated so much and supported so much of my fellow neighbors' work and efforts, suddenly what we say doesn't count anymore, has no meaning. You get to determine what happens after we've been promised something from years ago. And as Christine said, Christine, you're amazing. absolutely amazing. Yeah, we've been robbed, we've been had, and it's not fair. And as Barbara said, you do have an opportunity to right a wrong, and I hope you do so. Anyway, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anita. Janine, we have other speakers?
Yeah, last person, Eric.
Eric, welcome.
Thank you for having me. My name is Eric Sawyer. I am a long-term survivor. I've been living with symptoms of HIV since 1981. I helped start the protest group ACT UP that did a lot of the early activism around HIV. And also, full disclosure, I'm a co-founder of Housing Works. Although I'm not an employee of Housing Works, I'm no longer on their board, just a long-term supporter. I'm here mainly to speak in favor of the LORIO and especially in favor of supportive housing for long-term survivors like myself. It was mentioned in the presentation that the Hell's Kitchen area is the area of the city with the highest concentration of people living with HIV and AIDS. A majority of people living in the city with HIV and AIDS are more than 50 years old, and a majority are long-term survivors. As many of you may know, HIV causes an acceleration in the aging process. People with HIV develop lots of comorbidities of aging, from diabetes, heart disease, peripheral neuropathy, skeletal issues like the need for hip replacements and back degeneration, and the list goes on and on and on. And what is happening with long-term survivors is that with an absence of supportive housing, people are having to leave areas like Hell's Kitchen, which have been their long-term home, because they're priced out of their housing, but also priced out of supportive services and care. There are some people on government subsistence that are lucky enough to get a placement in units like this, but the number of units are so small, and I can't tell you how many of my friends who had careers as professionals who, when they became ill, had to go on private long-term disability programs, and as they turn 65, they lose access to those programs, which are helping to subsidize their housing costs, and they are being forced out of the neighborhood. That gets made even more difficult as their health declines. So I can't tell you how desperately these long-term survivor units are needed. And I hope you'll, look in your heart and realize that, there are lots of people in needs of housing. This is a neighborhood with very high population of LGBT people and the highest concentration of people living with HIV. And these units are desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you, all our speakers. Janine, are there any other speakers from the community?
Maria and Richard want to speak.
Two more? Okay, Maria, welcome.
Oh, she's moving over now.
Thank you.
Well, hi, JD. It's me.
Hey, welcome, Maria.
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello, everybody. That was a really interesting presentation. I've been on since the beginning, heard everything, JD. Let me introduce myself. So I'm Maria Ortiz. I am co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services. With Joe, I'm also a licensed social worker. I was born and raised in the community in Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, and I actually live 1 block from the MTA site in an affordable unit. I personally could not afford to live in Hell's Kitchen right now, if not in an affordable unit. So I personally and also I would say professionally deeply appreciate living in a unit like this. And I see how it impacts other people's lives as well, in a really positive way. I think that the agreement worked on and what is being presented today and the difference in that is not okay. And I think the city, I think it's really unfortunate that for all of the people who worked on it and spent all that time working on it years ago, and to see what we have today. And I think, of course, that creates distrust, which is like a theme that I keep hearing from a lot of people in the community, especially who've been on the board a long time and who worked on this. For example, from Christine. I want to share that personally, I'm open to supportive housing, and I believe that we as a city need to have more, including especially for families. But I will say that in my role as co-chair of Housing, Health, and Human Services, I feel strongly that I have to echo what a majority of the constituents are saying at this meeting. And that is, and with that, basically, I want to add that I would urge the parties involved to come to a more equitable agreement that, that can receive more community support. Thanks, JD.
Thank you, Maria. Well said. Well said. Janine, I think we have one more speaker, and then I'm going to call on Jeffrey.
Yeah, Richard Marins wants to speak again, and then John Smallwood has his hand up again.
I just wanted to say that this is a neighborhood that's flexible and knows how to accommodate different groups. We could have designed something that could have dealt with all of this, but our elected representatives decided to keep us in the dark and to do this behind our backs. And I just don't think that we can say that more clearly. This is not about HPD and the developers and everyone so much as it is about our local council people. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Jeffrey, if you just will wait, I think John Smallwood just had one last comment.
Yes, JD, I was hoping for just for the benefit of people who may have not been involved in the Uler process before, if you could just explain if anyone has comments either for or against the project, how do they do that going forward? And then what would be the expectation in the next 60 days in terms of either deliverables from the development team, those type of things, just for, for people who may not be familiar with the process.
I think that's an excellent question, John. I think as soon as we wrap this up, we will have a discussion about how we should move forward and how we would like to work with HPD. If you can just wait, I think we'll get to that. Good point.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, welcome.
Thanks, JD, and thanks everybody for being here tonight. I just wanted to point out something that I find pretty remarkable and ironic given the state of the situation. Community Board 4 has a reputation for wanting to work with the city to build more housing in our district. We have a 117-page affordable housing plan that we delivered to the former mayoral administration very early on in the administration, that we shared repeatedly with HPD and with EDC and other relevant agencies to bring to life affordable housing in our district. This site, of course, was a part of that plan. But what the stench is that is so bad here is that an agency woefully aggressively chose to disregard the community, a community that has always been willing to have a conversation about how to develop and preserve affordable housing on the west side of Manhattan, an area that has been under immense pressure, as we all know, for literally a century. And so here we are, finding ourselves at a real flashpoint in a community that has long had a well-established, well-respected, and at times, no doubt, combative relationship with the city of New York. And they're burning it to the ground right now. I think a lot of our neighbors would support all of what is on the table were any consideration given to the work that was put in a decade ago in that points of agreement that was established. For the record, meetings that I was at in my time in previous jobs in elected officials' offices. So this has been a long meeting. We are all exhausted, I think, at the amount of time that's been spent on this topic because of how slighted we all feel. I live 2.5 blocks from the site. And And it really is just shocking to me how the city can just sit here so plain-faced and just present something that really considers nothing of the past decade of work. So JD, those are my comments for the evening, and I greatly appreciate everybody being here tonight.
Well, Jeffrey, I don't have to make closing comments because you've done it so well. I want to wrap up this meeting. We have one more item, but before I do, I want to thank Felipe and Sarah and Andrew and Munson for presenting and listening to our comments. And Munson, there will be no employee parking in that. Right, okay. Thank you for that. I just want to wrap up this meeting. We're going to discuss what to do next, but I just want to say thank you to everybody and Sarah and Felipe. Many of us here, we're not professionals. We are not compensated. We love and live in this neighborhood. And I too am a little taken aback at the lack of understanding of the betrayal that many of us feel. And Felipe, you are working for the government. You must, the city government, you must know that trust is essential, So my hope, along with Jeffrey, I'm sure, is that we would be able in the next 30 days or 45 days
60
to have a discussion to move forward. And I did not get any of that tonight. So please consider that we need to work together on this. While we have time, it's essential for the health of the city as well as the community. And for you personally, I would think, I hope anyway. Now to answer John Smallwood's question, what next? What do we do here? Joe, your hand is up.
Yeah, so our goal, as always, on our community board is to, JD, can you mute for a second? Our goal is always in a community board to come up with a compromise and a solution. And that's what we're going to work with here, no matter how much at this current juncture we have had a presentation that made it sound as if there was no discussion for the past 2 years. We had little back and forth, but from September of last year, we've been engaged. Our board will take this up again at our February meeting. We will be doing a presentation and vote at the March board meeting. We are taking our maximum time in order to work with the council member, with HPD, with city planning, to come to a proposal that can be a compromise. And I always say this in public meetings, a compromise means none of us are happy in the end. But right now, we have a couple of items. First, we have the AMI bans. Second, we have a building, you might have just put the zone, special district zoning in a shredder. You have changed so many things and proposed district-wide changes in order to make this building happen. I would like you to very much as a developer, go back and look how you can make this building happen within the context of the current zoning actions. And as we brought up at our last meeting, for things that have to happen, that can't happen through zoning, for mayoral zoning overrides. And we are going to be working with the block associations and everyone else to come up with some sort of middle ground somehow, somewhere on AMI bans to bring moderate middle income units to this location and to maximize the family units. The last piece is the building. We'd like to work with you to make it look like it fits into the neighborhood. It is extremely generic. We never get a chance to talk about that because of some of the other issues. And it's a building that fits in our neighborhood. You saw the DEP proposal. That is exactly the kind of thing we've talked about, how to make the buildings be in context, not to stand out and scream like a double height entrance. We're going to work with the MTA also to reduce that space and to see what we can do in a political settlement to come up with something that makes everyone unhappy so we can get to some sort of conclusion. We really look forward to working with you, and for members of the public, we'll meet about this again in February, and you can start sending comments on this proposal to Jesse at the community board through the community board address, and note your concerns. They can be included and attached to our eventual letters regarding this proposal. The last thing I want to note here, we've gotten past it to a degree, but I want to make it clear. This is not a vote the community board will take. We're in favor or against housing for HIV positive low-income people versus moderate and middle-income people. We're in favor of housing for our entire neighborhood for a full range of incomes. And we're never going to have that discussion to think that our neighborhood is not welcoming, because that's what our neighborhood is and has been for the past 60 to 70 years, diverse and welcoming. So we ask you again, when you bring supporters or you solicit people to come and speak on your behalf, never say that our neighborhood is not welcoming. That's who we are. It's in our actual DNA. We're just trying to come up with a solution here that gets everybody something. Thank you very much for that. And
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
JD.
Thank you, Joe. Sarah or Felipe?
Yeah, if I
could
could just say,
I
I just want to thank.
If I could just respond quickly,
Go ahead.
I don't think any of our supporters tonight came and accused the community board of not being accepting of people with AIDS or long-term survivors. So
thank you.
I think Eric just spoke to Joe.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you all, thank everyone here tonight. It's not always easy being the city because in this sense where there's been maybe some missteps. So we acknowledge that. Can you hear me? Can folks hear me all right? Okay. But yeah, like Joe was saying, I just want to thank you, Joe, for those comments. We're still early in this process, and there's certainly still discussions we can have on most of those items that you mentioned, and like you know the Uler process even better than I do.
Horrible echo, Paris. Echo.
Horrible echo. Well, I'll shut up. I just wanted to thank you and say the conversation is still going.
Thank you, Paris. So the conversation, Joe's point, can we take your word for it that we will continue this conversation? Paris, is that what you said? There was a lot of echo, so we didn't hear that. Okay, thank you, Paris, for saying.
JD, you're still talking, you're on mute.
I know, I'm sorry. I think Chris has a closing remark. Chris?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Joe, thank you so much for putting it so plainly that we are an incredibly accepting community. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Christine, for calling out, one, our incredible loss of affordable housing over the last 2 decades in this community and how this project was part of that means to fix it. I just want to state that while the Uler process is 60 days, I believe that we need to start having a conversation now with DCP and HPD before full board. And I know that this executive committee at CB4 can make that happen. I know that JD can make that happen, but we should not wait until a letter is in for this full board to vote. This needs to be something that's constantly evolving into the agreement that Joe so eloquently put. We need to all be unhappy and with what we settled and have peace with this settlement at the end.
Thank you, Chris. Good point. I will ask Jesse and Paris, how soon can we get together and start working on this? Paris?
Paris and I will get in touch with each other tomorrow or the following day. We'll be on top of it.
Okay.
To be clear, just to make sure everybody's clear, what Joe is saying is we are not voting on a letter tonight. There will be no letter at the February full board for this item. We'll continue to meet, and we're going to take our 60 days to continue to meet and hopefully continue to discuss it at committee until it's time to vote on something.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, presenters, and thank you, committee, and thank you, community. And MTA, thank you all for coming. We have one more item, and it's an important item because it is another site which this community board may be able to get developed as an affordable housing site. I would remind everybody the Slaughterhouse site, which provided hundreds of affordable apartments, supportive apartments, came through this committee and this board. We may have another chance with another site that called Site K. And I'm going to ask Bob Benfato, who's the chief of the Hudson Yards bid over there. Bob, if you would give us an update on Site K.
Yeah, this is a quick update. Site K is on 11th Avenue across from Javits between 35th and 36th Street. It was put out as an RFP a few months back, pretty open-ended. Javits wanted a hotel, some people put in for commercial, another community wanted housing. I think some people did put in for housing, but on December 21st, the Empire State Development Corp announced that they have pulled the RFP. It's been rescinded. So therefore, the site right now is no longer available. And they're going to supposedly go back to the community and see what will come. This is all the fallout from the Cuomo administration leaving and the new administration coming in. That's pretty much the update.
Thank you, Bob. And it was a push by this community board to have that thrown out and revisited, I believe. So again, thank you, Bob.
That was the board's position.
Thank you all for this meeting. Thank you for staying with this meeting, and thank you for making it civil and having a very good discussion and giving us hope that we can move forward.
Thank you so much, JD and CB4 for hosting us again. It was a pleasure. Have a good night.
Thank you, Felipe. Any move to continue this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks all so much. Really appreciate it.